Hi, everybody. You are listening to Donovan Eilert, not John Campbell, because John is terribly ill, sick, or out of the room at the moment, and he left me with the podcasting equipment. What I would like to tell you is that we are coming back for our first ever second part episode, our two-part episode with Ibrahim Moustafa about these Superman films and technically also about his work, but most importantly about the Superman films. Now, we're in a very dark time. Richard Donner is no longer with the franchise, and we are going for Superman 3. Just hang in there with us. We're about to tune in, see what everybody feels about this, and we also get to learn about the time that Superman was scratched. And we'll see you in a bit.
Yeah, we'll turn now to Superman 3, which, boy. So Richard Lester, who finished up Superman 2 and added a bunch of the crap I don't like in it,
Right.
now got to make an entire movie of crap I don't like, basically, with Superman 3. And for some reason, because Richard Pryor was on The Tonight Show talking about how much he likes Superman, Warner Brothers was like, get him in there.
Yeah.
And
one thing real quick that we skipped over, the opening to Superman 2 was fantastic. The Eiffel Tower.
No, that is a Richard Lester edition that actually is not bad.
Yeah. I dig that one.
Yeah, that's a real Superman kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and we were talking about there's some child abuse in these movies. There's some.
Oh, the kid at the Niagara Falls.
Well, and then
there's
the
that
kid in
one.
the first one with the cat out of the tree and takes it inside, and it's like,
Mommy, yes, flying man got Fluffy
like-
out of the tree.
haven't I
Come
told
here,
you not to
liar,
lie
smack.
and then
Yeah.
smack me? Which we're talking about. Drop that sound effect. Like, drop that
That's
sound effect.
an
and it's a
easy
normal
fix on a
line.
Blu-ray release there.
Yeah.
That one I can get behind. I'm not going to complain.
George
on the
Lucas, that
Yeah,
child.
yeah, exactly. We're like,
George Lucas, the child abuse.
I don't know how you could beat your child after falling off Niagara Falls, but that happens.
Yeah,
If the kid deserves
I was
it.
going to say, I believe you and I were like, that kid kind of had it
Just let
coming,
him go.
actually. He was being
But the thing that works also at Niagara Falls is Lois trying to figure out that he's Superman.
Yeah.
Falling in. Doesn't work. He, like, outsmarts
and
you
there's
somehow.
there's a
But you
different
said
version
there's
of that
the Donner
in
cut, it's
Donner where
different.
she throws herself out of the Daily Planet building.
Yeah,
And
it
then
gets a little
shoots him.
cartoony. She
And he-
like lands on one of those roll
Because he
canopies.
runs down, he in super speed runs
Oh,
down,
that's right, he does
opens
that.
up the canopy for her to
That's
land
right.
on, and then runs back up, and he's like, oh my God, Lois.
Yeah, that's a good. Oh, there's a lot of scenes in that one that
Well,
but-
because I love the one, and unfortunately, it's test footage.
Oh, it's not
the-
actually that made it?
it was
the
from
film?
her audition, right?
Yeah,
She's
but it's in the
towel.
movie, and that scene is way better than him falling into the fire.
Yeah,
she pulls out a
Tripping over the
gun.
polar bear head or whatever.
Because she pulls out a gun and she has a line that's like, the mistake I made was risking my life to prove you were Superman. I know you're Superman so much that I'm going to shoot you, and I know you'll be okay. And she fires this gun, and he does an amazing thing. And even in test footage, the way he just, in a split second, becomes Superman without changing his costume or anything. He stands to his full height, his shoulders go back, and the gun was a blank.
Yeah,
But he turned into Superman in that moment. And that's awesome.
that shit was great.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? That would be...
As opposed to him
I
tripping
think
and falling
there
in
was
the fire.
probably a lot of spiteful stuff, maybe with the producers and Donner.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
they didn't want to use what he shot,
man.
even though
Well, because they went back and reshot things exactly the
It's
same way that
because,
Donner did them. for
they
two.
changed the movie enough so they could take his name off of it.
Right, exactly. You have to prove you directed a certain percentage of the movie to get the credit. So they actually reshot exactly scenes that Donner had shot.
That's insane.
Oh, is out of control crazy. But Superman 3, a movie that is out of control crazy.
That's the one I've
Opening on an unemployment office where dejected Richard Pryor can't hold the job.
The beginning of
and
this movie-
denied unemployment.
The beginning of this movie is really like, the beginning of this movie really, you're like, This is a Superman movie?
But
Did I
here's
put
what
in the
we're
wrong
saying:
thing?
is if he became the villain and he got a tragic backstory, it would kind of make sense a little bit. He just then randomly is good at computers and randomly gets a job where he needs to and randomly is able to steal a whole bunch of money.
It's like
and then he's not even the villain. He's just kind of a sidekick who builds a video game for like when he's trying to blow up Superman and it's a literal points and video game and game over. I'm like,
It's like a ColecoVision game.
But that was back before they knew what computers did.
Oh, and you
No, computers did
point
everything.
values. Like, why would you
Well,
say
the way Robert Vaughn, who our villain is not Lex Luthor, it's Robert Vaughn basically playing Lex Luthor. And he just comes to him and he's like, "Look, you're really good with computers. Can you control the weather in Colombia so I can make money off of coffee
I can
beans?"
do anything with computers.
That's the idea.
Right? And he's like, I want you to tell all the computers to do this and then tell them to never not do it again. And you're like, wait, what? How?
Well, and nobody had computers weren't a household thing back then,
Yeah.
so
Right.
people were like, "Oh shit, you could do that."
Yeah, it's scary.
This was War Games era, like
Yeah, because there's also this running thing in that movie with the Daily Planet's sponsoring some kind of like
oh my god,
lottery
this
to win a-
subplot, with the bingo thing at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
there's like the subplot of the family going on vacation, and that's when the weather changes in Colombia.
which we talked about another James Bond connection is very similar to the plan from Die Another Day, using satellites to control
it's like
the
Icarus.
sun and stuff. Yeah,
Totally the same thing.
yeah.
What I love about the bad guy's evil plan, it's such a Lex Luthor plan of just like ruin their coffee crop, and then I
You
will
know
make
that
all
they
the-
wrote Lex Luthor,
Oh, yeah.
and then when Hackman said no, they just did a search and replace of
But-
any time it says Luthor, and they
But
wrote in
here's,
whatever. I don't
here's
remember that guy's
what I
name.
love
Who
about his
cares?
plan is, so like the plan fails, Superman like dries all the coffee beans with his laser vision. That makes sense.
Is that the one where? No, that's 4, where he stops the volcano by throwing the.
The mountaintop.
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
But what happens
Yeah,
is,
John, it is.
so he's like, okay, so that didn't quite work, but what I could do with this other computer thing is get all of the oil, and then
Yeah, that's right. His plan changes about 4
Right.
times throughout that movie.
but here's the thing, so like he says I can get all of the oil, then they turn the TV back on and suddenly Superman saves the day. And he's like, oh no, he'll ruin my oil plan that I've just had, that I told no one else about, that has not been even enacted a little bit yet. And somehow Superman will ruin that plan.
because he's Superman, this is what he does. Remember how he ruined Luthor's plans? He'll do that to me.
That movie did have a few nice instances of him like averting disasters, like the fire at that.
Oh, the
plant
chemical
and stuff.
plant thing, that was fun.
Yeah.
That feels like classic Superman
Except
stuff.
for, I love
And he kind of
how
had Chekhov's gun with the acid thing, and
I
like
love how
That's all fine.
unconcerned that lab tech is. He's like, if these reach this acid's going to explode everywhere.
acid's
look, he needs to
That's
keep
fine.
cool under pressure while he keeps these chemicals cool.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I love this idea that he's just standing there watching the temperature, like, it's getting hotter. This is going to be bad. Let me write that. He's like writing stuff down on a clipboard. What?
Yeah.
For what
Yeah.
purpose?
Oh, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die for science.
That movie has the most cartoonish opening sequence too.
Oh
like
my
the
God.
blind guy
Mr.
across the street.
Magoo
Yeah.
levels
Yeah.
of just absurd,
Happenstance.
stupid,
It's like a Rube Goldberg.
Yep.
machine
the fact that
of, like,
nobody slipped on a banana peel was shocking.
Yeah.
Hey, but somebody got a pie in the face. That's
I
the
know.
punchline
Hey,
of the bit.
I don't mind Superman pie in the face. Because the
Oh, I
bumbling
mind it big time.
Okay, after all that stuff is ridiculous. But a bumbling Clark of like, ooh, excuse me, miss, and like accidentally getting a guy in the face. But it should have been used for a plot point. It should have been used as Clark Kent accidentally, quote unquote, getting some jerk in the face to get even with him, right? Like, but making it look like it's an accident as opposed to an actual accident.
like the
And
way
he's
he
like,
throws the weights at the guy in Superman
Yeah.
4 in the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the parts I do like of Superman 4 is
Yeah.
that the sequence. Actually.
One of the
No pain, no gain.
There's a
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
handful of things I like in Superman 4, and that's one of them. Yeah,
also
beginning.
the best. I think the best sequence from that movie is the photo booth thing.
yes,
Yeah.
Where he changes in the photo booth. I love that.
And he just rips off the top 3 and gives the kid the one.
Yeah.
Kid.
However, the fact that he's saving a guy from drowning in his own car is a little strange.
it's pretty insane.
That's like
So I was watching this
Did
movie
he
after
crash
work
over
one
a-
day.
he cracked over a hydrant
Yeah.
and he couldn't get out and he couldn't roll a window down apparently.
Superman tears
So
the roof off
everybody's
the
just,
car and
like,
pulls the guy
hanging out watching this guy drown in his car.
Yeah.
Nobody tries to break it with anything.
right.
So I was watching this movie after work a few days ago, and my roommate kept coming down over and over again every time he'd hear me scream "What?" at this movie, just over and over and over again. And that
I'm
was
really
the,
sorry that you had to. I feel like part of this is just on my accord that you had to
Look,
watch.
again, it was more like I hadn't seen these movies in years. I was trying to give myself a refresher, and I like some part of my memory had blocked this movie out.
We did pay to see the Fantastic Four movie in the
And,
theater for this podcast, so
that's
I don't.
true. No,
you can't.
Quite
say it's worse than
frankly,
that.
tough call, John. Superman 3 or Fan 4 Stick?
No.
Nope.
Superman 3 is way better than Fan 4 Stick.
I don't know.
It is way
new
better.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, don't. Yeah.
Listen to our
I'm curious.
4-hour
We-
review of
Well,
us.
but see, I'm gonna have to watch it before I do that.
Yeah.
No,
That's how it
no,
works.
we took that bullet
Listen-
for you.
listen to three-
Listen to us weeping.
Very depressed
It
man
was a
literally
blank
walk
mic.
from the movie theater onto mic and talk
yeah,
about
it was
how.
immediately after, and it was just like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah, I don't know, guys.
What's the point anymore?
Or
Yeah.
even-
Our first negative. I mean, I would
We're
say
pretty positive show for in general. You know, we try to focus stuff on.
Unless we're talking about Superman.
Well, now we're talking about Superman too. Oh, talking about Mr. Magoo like shenanigans. Well, number one, Robert Vaughn's character has a mountain
slope on
ski
his-
slope on top of his building.
Sure, why
totally
not?
plausible.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you had like massive,
I mean-
like, fuck you money.
It's totally
I don't.
You have-
That's exactly
And
right.
he's got everything in his.
He
his-
owns small
his
portions of the
apartment
Grand Canyon,
turns into
okay?
maps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Everything
everything
is
is
like, we'll flip this up. It's
You
a
talk
map.
about being a
I'm gonna-
Bond villain.
I'm going to open up this
Robert
wall.
Vaughn
It's
is
a map of the
100% a
same thing.
Bond villain.
Holy shit! That I mean, well, you said it with Die Another Day. Like
Yeah.
it is a very. It's a.
Oh, yeah.
What did Mankiewicz didn't write that one? Did he?
No, he didn't.
What
I want to see the one where Robert Vaughn, though, is really Korean, North Korean, I think, and he's a general's son and gets his face changed to not look like that anymore. If that's how that movie started, I'd be in.
There was that great bit where the fountain flips over and the map's underneath,
Yeah.
but the fountain doesn't quite turn off in time, and so you see the what's her name?
Who cares?
Yeah,
Sister?
no, not
Or
the
the
sister.
femme fatale
Yeah,
or-
whatever. I don't know.
The bimbo who's
But,
not
like-
really dumb, but it's only revealed in one scene that it in no way has any bearing on the plot.
Two
Yeah.
scenes. She's reading the book and then also at the
But
computer.
anyway, you see her in the background,
Yeah,
like
but
skitter
either
out of the
way.
side because the fountain doesn't quite clearly that's the only take they got of
You know,
that.
she gets splashed with water.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the
they
reasons
couldn't flip it back. They're like, oh, man.
one of the reasons the Salkind said they picked Richard Lester is he's a very economic filmmaker.
Yeah.
It shows.
I love that idea that he's just like, oh, he's really cheap.
A beloved superhero. What do we need? Finance.
Well, did you guys watch that documentary Electric Boogaloo?
It's on my queue. I need to watch it. Yeah.
It's great.
it's
and they talk about
amazing.
Superman 4 in it and how they basically were just like, you can do this with $15 million, right?
It was supposed to be like 36, and they
Yeah,
slashed
just
it to
cut
15.
Yeah, and I mean, it shows. I mean,
Oh yeah, it is
that's
a show.
one of the honestly, that's one of the things that makes people not like 4 as much. I think
The special effects are
The effects
really
were rough.
bad.
Not that
They're
much
pretty
worse.
bad.
They're not that much worse for the time, for sure.
Yeah.
But
What year was
I think-
4?
88,
some yeah,
88. Yeah, I think it was 88.
yeah, somewhere in there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, compared to like Jedi that's been long out, yeah. I mean, it's not.
That's
that
5 years post Jedi.
Well, they used a
Yeah.
lot of like repeated shots.
I was gonna
of
say that's
him
the biggest.
flying.
They have
towards
that
the camera.
one shot of him flying to the camera.
Yeah,
that
and they use it like 4 or 5
Yeah,
times.
they just keep using it. This is okay.
And there's one scene where he saves a runaway subway train, and he comes out with one of my favorite moments. It's the first transformation into Superman you see him do, and he steps into the phone booth. Classic, right? Steps out.
because that was a gag through the first 3. He's like, he can never find a phone booth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I love the first one. It's the half phone booth, and he goes up and he's
like,
like, "Oh,
no,
can't do
yeah.
that."
And he does that awesome through the revolving doors, spin around and come out in the
And that's when
costume.
we get the cab driver going.
Say, Jim.
That's a slick suit you got there.
But yeah, so he goes in this phone booth and he steps out, and the camera shows like his boot step out first, and the music kind of swells up, and you're like, oh, here we go. And then he flies down the tunnel, and none of the bystanders like turn to look. Like they're all just looking, like waiting for a train. And Superman goes flying by, but because they superimposed this like reused shot, it's
Yep.
just
Yeah,
And so I made this joke, and then like literally a month later, somebody made a video of it. But I was like, at the time I had a roommate, and he and his girlfriend had just finished watching Gravity. And then I put on Superman 4. And I was like, you guys want to see how this movie ends in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And it, the opening scene where he saves the cosmonauts.
Oh, yeah.
No,
and then
it's-
somebody made a thing where
That's what I was thinking. It was that guy flying away. I was like, "There she goes."
Yeah. Did you guys see that video though that
No,
somebody
I haven't
made?
seen it.
Somebody mashed up Superman 4 and
Yes,
Gravity.
and they
Oh my
made
God.
I
it
love
so
it. I'm
that
gonna go find this.
Clark hitting the baseball is the thing that knocks Sandra Bullock loose.
Oh, that's incredible.
And then he flies up and says it's great.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing. What I love about 4.
Let's just turn to 4. 3's a piece of
Yeah, I
crap.
don't have
Like
much to say about
it's a giant piece of
Here's
shit.
something
Like it's
I love
really
about
bad.
4.
Made me
it's
livid.
The first,
It's
the
just it makes me
first
angry.
Chris Reeve one where
He addresses
not,
the UN. Yes, it is. No,
He's not America-centric, right?
yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
He's not, and I mean,
I do like the
speaking-
beginning
he's
of it
speaking
with the
other-
cosmonauts a lot,
He's speaking
actually.
other languages,
Yes.
right?
yeah,
is
which
great.
I was like, oh, he speaks Russian.
And he
why wouldn't
speaks,
he?
Italian.
later. But I love after this. This is like perfect Superman. He steps on.
Okay,
the
I'm sorry. Quick diversion. When you say Italian, one thing from Superman 3. I love how evil Superman. He's not evil. He's just a jerk, and he like straightens
Leaning
the
Tower of
Leaning
Pisa.
Tower of
But
Pisa.
honestly, when he's doing that, it's like he's probably saving
my
that
favorite
building.
character in that movie is the Italian shop owner who
What
tells.
am I going to do?
Well, no, he's speaking Italian the whole
know, but
time.
that's
and
basically
no,
what his
it
character
is.
is.
But he definitely, at some point, like I have a rough approximation of some Italian curse words. He definitely tells Superman to go fuck himself.
And he just waves.
awesome.
Superman just waves. But the thing is you get people speaking in other languages in Superman 4 with subtitles, as opposed to like,
Yes.
we're French cops, so we speak with the French
Yeah,
accent.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god!
yeah.
All
Give
those
me the
cops
one.
speaking English in Superman 2 is great.
Yeah, and I mean that happens.
yeah,
that
well,
happens
we
in-
believe they're
in
terrorists.
all the
They have a
Italian
nuclear
three.
bomb on the top of the Eiffel Tower. What are we going to do?
It's a hydrogen bomb.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But I love the
And their plan
moment
is to just shoot it down.
when he stops the train, and then he's like, "By the way, please tell everybody that these are still the safest way to travel."
Oh, he always
Like,
is doing that.
but he doesn't do it in the other movies.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does. It's like
Well, in the
statistically,
first
air
one.
travel is still the safest
Oh,
way
the
to travel.
helicopter, and he does it in Returns as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but wait, that doesn't count.
I just
All right.
love like that.
We'll
is-
get into
that
Returns
is,
in a second here.
That is Superman to me, right? He's just like,
Absolutely.
It's okay. Everything's safe.
Yes.
You're fine.
Here-
Don't worry.
Here's
let me get in. Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, no matter how bad I think the movies are, Christopher Reeve is always Superman, and he
Yes.
always is selling it to me that he's Superman. Even in 3, as terrible as it is,
He is working so hard.
you never get for a second him thinking this is stupid.
Yeah. Now, 4 has a lot of bad stuff in it.
Yes.
I would argue that it doesn't have any more bad stuff than the other movies.
No.
Maybe not. I think the first one probably has the least amount of
yes.
bad in it, but certainly not any more than 2 has.
In its theatrical cut, for
Right.
sure.
So here are the things. This is why I love Superman 4. First of all, we see a Superman who's been at it for a while, right? Like he's Superman in this world, and everybody, kids write letters to him like they do Santa Claus. You know, he's up against a very real world problem. Like the nuclear arms race was a big deal back then, and if Superman were to have existed in that time, this is the type of thing he'd be facing. He addresses the United Nations. That is my favorite Superman scene in any of the movies.
It's great.
I get chills watching it to this day. Like every time I watch it.
Yeah.
He's struggling with the idea of accepting Earth as his home, right? He's not a Kryptonian anymore. He's like using that crystal as the last of his connection to Krypton.
Right.
He has to struggle with selling the farm. I mean, that's very symbolic of his struggle with his, Kryptonian heritage and stuff.
Yeah.
It just puts him, there's a love triangle that it puts him in all of these situations where he has to really ask himself tough questions. It's not just about easily pulling a kitten out of a tree or like, of course there's you stop the missile heading for the fault line.
Right.
Like no brainer. Of course you save the school bus of kids
Right.
falling off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
But this movie, it's like, he's up against really tough choices and none of the other movies have done that.
You're right. Yeah, for sure.
I have a nephew who's 7, and I showed it to him when he was like 5 or 6, and he recapped it to his mom, my sister. Like he was like, "Yeah," and we watched a Superman movie where he gets scratched and turns into an old man, and I was like, well, yeah,
Inaccurate. But yeah.
but that's what you took away.
Yeah.
from it. Yeah.
He's
like,
afraid of being scratched now. Your nephew. He's like, oh, God,
I don't want to be
turn
old.
But to your point, we see a more worldly Superman.
Yeah.
He's flying all across the world, helping people in other places, not just America.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's my issue with Superman 4. And I don't think I like everything this movie is trying to say, but this movie is constantly killing what this movie is trying to say. Some of it's from budget, some of it's from script writing. I want to like this movie so much more than I do, because I do like everything you're saying. I wish I saw that more in the movie. It's there, but I always feel like it's the subtext of all this silly stuff that's going on. I guess, I mean, yeah, there's, oh God, yeah, I mean, yes, the special effects are terrible, but I mean, that I can forgive to a certain extent. But there are also things like Mariel Hemingway being able to breathe in space, and you're like, what?
Stuff they just on a budget and of the time don't.
That's the sense I get.
It's
like, okay, they were just throwing this thing together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, some of that stuff works. I love Superman addressing the UN. That's awesome.
Also, the best Superman hair of any of
Oh,
them.
yeah. He looks
I
great.
think he might have had a wig on, though.
Maybe.
It might have been a hairpiece just for the consistency of it.
You think so?
Because he here's the thing.
It might have-
You and I
I'm
were
not-
talking
I'm
about
not
this.
Sure.
Time has been rough on Margot Kidder in this movie as Lois Lane.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say her best turnout is Lois
She's
Lane
great
is in this movie.
Her performance, absolutely.
That scene where she goes to visit him and he's, sick from the scratch, and she brings the cape and she's like, clearly alluding to the fact that she knows that she's like, if
But
you
the-
do see him or you do hear from him, can you let him know that we miss him and we
I really, really like that scene. I truly hate the return of the amnesia kiss and the implication that he's potentially done this multiple times.
Right.
Which is tantamount to some sort of an emotional and psychological abuse of
But
this
you know what?
woman.
After that kiss, that scene in the apartment that I was talking about,
She knows.
Yeah, then it brings up this whole thing about, well, then what is the amnesia kiss?
wasn't there a scene in that where, God, I should know. I feel like I could know that movie verbatim, but I feel like there's a scene where she says like, "I've always known" or something like that.
She says, "I remember everything."
Yeah.
But that's after he reveals, conceivably for the first time, or for who knows how many times, that he's Superman.
87th.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, "Of course I know. I've always known," or something like that. But then that's the other thing about it. Not only do I dislike the concept of a potentially emotionally abusive Superman, but I don't like the idea that they're breaking their own rules in some ways.
Again, I get back to the
left
point
with
of
this
just
weird-
like, have you seen the last couple of movies?
Well,
No?
they're really throughout the whole movie is this just like he does whatever he needs to do when he put it's in 4 when he puts the Great Wall of China back together with like his mind.
His blue heat vision.
Yeah.
Saying he's affecting the gravity of those things.
I know, but that's not a Superman thing. It's just like
I'm building.
they just
here,
like
John.
toss in whatever. What you can do this now, I guess, because that's what we need him to do.
Yeah, they definitely.
People weren't reading the comics at that time, so it didn't matter.
And I you know what? I wonder if that had a lot to do with, or something at all to do with people. He's too powerful. He just do whatever. It's like because they made up all these.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't
on the
do that
spot.
stuff. I've never seen him do that in a comic ever.
Yeah, that movie though, it does have, in my opinion, the best Clark Kent as well. Like he's a little bit, he's downplaying it more. Like it's not so like, oh well, gee willikers.
Yeah.
Like he's just.
Well, I like Smallville Clark Kent when he's at the farm and he's he doesn't have the glasses on, and you get sort of the sense of like, oh, here's like maybe the actual guy. If Superman is this like all powerful being of good, and Clark Kent is this weak nerd,
He's gotta
here's
be
this
somewhere
guy in
in between,
between,
right?
and
Yeah.
this is probably the guy he was up to the point when he assumed both identities.
Absolutely.
So I do like that a lot.
And
But there's
it's
very
the
little
only
of it.
movie where he goes back to the farm, and when you see him in that context too, But I think the way that he does Clark Kent in that movie, still like it's true to the other stuff, but it's just not as cartoonish and overblown. Like he bumps his knee on the desk when he goes to sit down to talk to Lacey Warfield in the office, and like that's the other thing I love about that movie. The Daily Planet subplot.
Yeah.
Like they were bought out by this
Well, the
National
Daily Planet
Enquirer
actually
thing.
matters in that movie.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
look, there's good stuff in this movie. I've said it's not Superman 3 by any means.
And he has like fun as Clark Kent a little bit, like when he's kind of flirting with Lacey and he's doing like flexing of, like the neon sign mimic thing that he does in the gym, and like
The gym sequence is really fun, and I love him throwing the weights at the guy.
yeah. Another cool transformation in that movie is when he gets into the limo and then like goes through and comes out the other end of Superman. That was great.
Yeah.
That hotel lobby.
Beats the crap out of the one in
Picked
3
up
where he
on
leaps through the back of a cop car.
Oh yeah.
All the double date stuff though works so well.
Yeah,
It works.
he's very well handled, well paced.
Yeah.
I like Lex Luthor, showing up on the Times Square screen. Like this is the only you can hear me on this frequency.
Which they pulled from the first movie.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Again.
She does a little bit of that, which is
Which,
cool.
which is okay. I
Lex
mean,
is
I don't.
the
There's
line
nothing
to
inherently wrong with that, but it was kind of like, Oh, okay.
He knows how to get hold of
Consistency,
Superman.
you know?
I don't. Yeah, and they added the video aspect of it. Obviously,
Yeah.
This is one where though I don't know if Gene Hackman wants to be here on this one.
Yeah.
And
I don't feel like Gene Hackman wants to be here on any of them.
no, see, I feel like he's going for it in
I
1
honestly
and 2.
don't feel like we've ever had a Lex Luthor that Kevin Spacey in
I can't watch
Returns.
him.
He just
Oh.
like showed up for the cash check and bounce.
We're on the
to watch it.
complete opposite ends of the table here, me and John. I feel like
Gorgoni and I are big Kevin Spacey. I mean, is there
I
anything?
I love him as an actor.
Yeah. Well, we can turn over to Superman Returns.
Wait, hold
actually,
on.
yeah. Was there something
Before-
else you wanted to say about?
Couple quick things about the Christopher Reeve movies.
Yeah.
Big complaints. In the first 3 movies, we see Perry White.
Oh God, I knew this was coming.
Hold on. We see Perry White. Every time we see Perry White, he has an untied bow tie around his neck in the middle of the day. What's that guy doing that he can't keep a bow tie tied around his neck? What was that costume character?
you
choice
know what
like?
he's constantly doing is like tugging at the neck.
Then wear a
because all of
regular
his
tie.
reporters are being so reckless, and one of them Superman.
Then wear a regular
Perry
tie
White just knows that.
or
Oh yeah,
just don't
it was
wear it
it was
at
on
all.
Clark Kent's resume.
It just kills.
Third
Also
bull-
Superman.
Speaking of Perry, though, best Perry White is in Superman 4 as well.
Oh, absolutely.
He has
However,
a reason to be cantankerous and like grumpy.
He's also
However-
not in the movie though, quite a bit.
No, I mean in the beginning,
'Cause
I
he-
won't have
he-
this grand old lady. Blah blah.
I
blah,
love
blah,
all
blah,
that
blah.
stuff
back
because
and
I
saves the day.
I
Yeah.
like Perry White as like old timey newsman. Like
Yeah.
he's the guy who's just been there forever.
Yeah.
And then in 4, he only wears straight ties,
Yes.
right? It's a weird choice. Like, why untied bow ties
That's
or
his
straight
arc,
ties?
though. He was like, "Fuck, I can't do
I
the
guess.
bow ties anymore."
You know who else has a bow tie arc in these movies?
Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen. And
Who has no other arc in these movies.
no, but listen,
37-year-old
this
Jimmy
is-
Olsen
This
in
is the
Superman
more
4.
disturbing arc.
Yeah.
Is somewhere between 3 and 4 he learns or he forgets how to tie a bow tie because they're all clip-ons in the 4th movie.
Are they?
And that drives they're not asymmetrical. If you look at a bow tie and it's asymmetrical, that person tied it, and they should be a saint. Like there should be patron saints of bow ties, right?
Yeah.
You are
But
wearing a bow
his-
tie
don't
right now.
Say that. But if they are perfectly tied, it's because the machine did it. And that, like, Jimmy, what are you doing?
So you're
What-
saying Jimmy Olsen is a machine?
he becomes
He's
machine
been replaced
somewhere
by a
between the two.
robot.
I also want to point. You mentioned 37-year-old Jimmy Olsen, and there's a line in Superman 3 where they're going back to the high school reunion in Smallville, and Clark alludes to a high school reunion or something for Jimmy, and Jimmy goes, "Gee, Mr. Kent, everyone I went to high school with is still in high school," and you're like, "How old are you?"
I forgot about that.
Like, wait a minute, how old is Jimmy?
Yeah.
Because he definitely looks like he's in his 30s.
He
for
was,
sure.
yeah, he was up there.
Mark McClure, I think, captures some of the essence of the character, although he's in like 4 minutes of each movie. I
Yeah.
see.
Oh, yeah.
Like you think he's going to be a major character in 3, and then he breaks his leg, and it's just out of the
The
movie.
rest of the time, he's great. Like, his... If I
Gee,
could-
Mr. Kent. I like him.
The suit and bow tie combinations that Jimmy Olsen rocks in those first 3 movies.
He looks like Jimmy
incredible.
Olsen.
He
I
looks
mean, the
just
character,
like
the
him.
costume design.
I would have that outfit.
I love
Any of
that scene in 4 when he's like, "So I guess Mr. Warfield wants some shots of you, little kid, in front of it. So I guess we'll do some." And then Superman shows up and he goes, "Gee, what a scoop!"
You know what's uncomfortable is when he turns in the pictures of
Oh my God.
the woman in the 3rd movie, and there's one of her face and 18 of her cleavage that he's turning in to work. It's
Yeah.
not like he's doing
Like,
his own thing.
this
he's
is the
like,
best I got.
he's
Yeah.
like Perry White. Check this out. Right?
Look, Perry has an appreciation for these things.
And
Why do you
Perry-
think Jimmy has a job?
Perry's like, Jimmy, these are ones you show me later. It gets
He's
weird.
going in my personal collection.
There was some. Do you guys know about the deleted scenes from Superman 4?
No,
They
did not get to those.
Okay, so there was a nuclear man, right?
Yep.
We didn't even talk about Nuclear Man, but I'm
He works.
not
I love
not,
his cat claws.
not
Yeah.
much of a fan of Nuclear Man.
He's got these like Lee press-ons. Like,
Yeah.
And they're like elongated at one
Retractable,
point.
yeah.
It's great.
They remind me of that one episode of Family Guy where they all get superpowers.
Right,
and,
Meg's is her
Meg's is her fingernails get slightly longer.
I bet you that was a play on it. But I love that he has Lex Luthor's voice.
Yeah.
I love that when he takes those footsteps and they singe the marble and stuff. And I don't know. I liked like that moon fight scene is amazing.
I love that.
I mean,
When he
in
hammers him into it,
isolation,
and, like-
in isolation,
And
fine.
Another really great Superman moment when he unburies digs himself out of the moon,
Yeah.
and then fixes the American flag before taking off to
Yes.
keep fighting him.
That's a very Superman
so
moment. Yeah.
perfect.
I also love in Superman 4, we get the now title of my autobiography. That,
yes.
What's the not Lois Lane? What's the other love interest?
Lacey Warfield.
Lacey Warfield. They're walking through the hotel lobby, and she goes, "How can somebody so square be so delicious?" I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I want. That's all I want people to say.
He's like,
I was going to say
brisket.
the
Like
second
that.
right.
the second you pointed that line out to me, I'm like, I now know why Donovan likes this movie.
That's the best. That's the best
Yeah,
movie.
like she doesn't want to like him, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean, but she just can't.
I
like
like that. I like that.
I like
she's
Mara Hemingway in that movie. I think
she's great.
She was like one of my first crushes.
I
She's
get-
like
I get it.
inexplicably drawn to him, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, and not to Superman. Like Lois
To
wants
Clark,
Superman.
exactly.
And
she's desperately throwing herself at him. There's that scene where he walks into her office and she's like spread out on the desk.
But she like sits all like
Yeah.
with her legs.
She's
like,
on the
crossed and
desk.
is like trying to look all sexy.
Also, speaking of legs crossed,
And
one of my
succeeding.
favorite. I love any scene where Superman has to like just sit down on a couch. Which there are a couple in
yeah,
four. There's
yeah,
some,
when
and,
they're-
he just like crosses his legs. But he's in the costume. He's like, "Oh, this is really weird to look at." It's just a
I love when
casual
he lands on the
Superman.
patio and he's like, "I'm out here, Lois," and he like lands almost in his seated in the chair. You know, another really great sequence in that movie is you do get like a return of Superman in that one as well. It's not as good as the 1 and 2,
Right.
But you know, like after he's been an old man,
Which
uses
was
that
really
last
weird.
Kryptonian crystal,
Yeah.
yeah.
For the 8th time, the last Kryptonian,
well, the thing is, you don't
Kryptonian
really see
crystal.
him slowly age, and all of a sudden there's a shot of him, and you're like, oh. It's kind
Well,
of
'cause
dark,
you're like-
and
you're like, I
trying to
get that
figure out,
it-
is he actually old or is that weird light?
I get that
Yeah,
it's
like,
killing him, but then when suddenly you cut back and he's old, you're like, "Oh, that's what it was doing to him."
And that never registered with me as a little kid. Like I never was like, whoa, he's old now. You know, it wasn't until I was an adult and
Just
rewatched
sickly.
it. Yeah,
Apparently that 5-year-old picked up on it though.
I know, right? My nephew's smarter than me. Yeah, I really do love that movie. Like,
I did too. On the second watching, that might be my second favorite Christopher Reeve.
yeah, I mean,
Let it be stated that the podcast only has a 50% recommendation for Superman 4: The Quest for
the
Peace.
Luther
I
plot
concur.
in that one is
It's okay.
It works just fine.
I mean, you know, he swindles those guys.
The fact
out of
that
their
he's
money.
back for this movie, I can
I
appreciate.
do like that he immediately betrayed those guys. That
Yeah.
felt very Lex Luthor
Yeah,
to me, where he's just
exactly.
like, "Oh no, we're not splitting the profits. You guys are just going to die."
a little out of his purview to genetically engineer something. I'll give him that. You know.
And how casually it's done.
Especially with such an idiot like for a sidekick.
Oh my
you know?
God, Lenny Luthor! I hated so much.
That car though,
That car.
was
It's good enough to distract the guards that Lex Luthor could escape.
Yeah.
But
You know what I found interesting? So I was watching all of these movies via like Amazon, so I was like renting them. In the third one,
you don't own a box set of this?
I really don't.
right.
Surprising no one that I don't own any Superman movies. But on the third one, on the description, it says, so Richard Pryor joins all-star Superman cast of Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, and Gene Hackman. So I was watching Superman 3 expecting Gene Hackman to show up at some point.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow,
so
I'm like
is everybody in
20
Superman
minutes
3?
from the end of this movie. Is Lex Luthor showing up at some point to like become one with
Wait.
the supercomputer? I'm
Hold on.
confused.
Hold on. 48 minutes into the film. You didn't see him in the background?
I was barely cognizant
You
of
guys,
the
we
blood
didn't-
seeping across my eyes while I was
Here's the
watching.
thing.
We
what-
didn't talk about Robot Sister.
Oh, Robot Sister.
boy. That's the thing. 3 is so crazy.
Nutty. What year was that one?
That was 83, I believe.
Okay.
So Return of the Jedi had like just come out.
Yeah,
It was
'cause
about to come
it
out.
was 78, so the first one's a year after Star Wars, then 80. You've got the
was-
same
yeah.
year as Empire, and then the next one is the same year as Jedi.
Insane.
Yeah, what a weird summer that must have
Yeah.
been. What the hell is this? After everybody's still high off of Jedi, but this is like, God, what? This movie's insane.
Maybe that's what they were just hoping, that nobody would notice.
The whole time I was watching Superman 4, I was just like, how did they get Hackman for this? Because it was a hard pass, I'm sure, on
Well,
3.
you know, Christopher Reeve, part of his deal was that he got to basically, I don't know if he came up with the story, but
Yeah.
he got to have
He's credited
input on
with
it.
some-
When
Yeah.
they also agreed to finance his passion project was a movie called Street Smart with him and Morgan Freeman.
I never saw. I didn't.
Yeah.
I love Morgan Freeman.
Oh, check it out. It's actually really good. Where like Christopher Reeve is a reporter who's trying to get in on the trying to figure out like the inner city gang problem.
And he's secretly Superman.
And Morgan Freeman's like the psychotic gang leader. And
No
stuff.
way.
It's great. It's actually a really good movie.
Okay, because
Street Smart.
you've seen Wanted, right? Mm-hmm. When Morgan Freeman goes, or you can shoot this motherfucker, and I was like, I don't think I've ever heard him like curse like that before.
It got a round of applause when I saw that movie. Everybody's like, "Yeah, Morgan Freeman."
Lucius Fox was like,
He's perfect.
inspiration.
Yeah, no, he's amazing in that.
other favorite moment in Superman 4 is
We're
when,
up to 38 favorite moments, by the way. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
The
like,
whole
I'm
movie is
hoping
my
people
favorite.
will listen to this and go, you know what, I should give that another watch.
Yeah.
And then they actually find things to appreciate in it.
And then our
Because
listenership just nosedives.
a lot of people don't even remember that there was a
Yeah.
Superman 4.
I do agree
it's
that
the
there are
shortest-
things
that's the
to
thing, Gorgonian,
appreciate.
I'm sure you could appreciate.
It is
It's the
like
shortest.
82 minutes long.
Yeah.
That had to do with budget cuts, I'm sure. There was a
Yeah.
longer script.
But when
levity of
Nuclear Man
pain.
is like messing with all the people in the street, and Superman is like, the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
that
feels a
line
lot
is
like
delivered so well.
feels
man.
a lot like 2 once again when that thing where they're like, he cares for these people. you know?
Yeah.
So here's a
Like
problem I have with
Trey. I do
all
love
of
that
the
line.
Christopher Reeve Superman
Trey.
movie is the crowds of people who will immediately start gathering around whenever something like superhero heroic is going on. They'll just start coming in and going
not
like,
just
let's get
Superman.
close and just look at
That's
it.
not just Superman.
Actually, a moment
People
I really
did that when they thought there was a leprechaun in a tree in real life.
Yeah, that feels real to me. I was gonna say a moment I actually really like in Superman 2 is when they throw the bus into him, and then all the people are
Yeah.
like, "You killed Superman. We're gonna get you."
Yeah,
They have like crowbars and like
The
pipes.
people in Metropolis are like, that's our guy. Like
they borrowed that in Spider-Man.
They totally
right? The
borrowed
first
that in
one?
Spider-Man. Yeah,
on the bridge.
they borrowed a lot from
You mess with
those
Spider-Man, you
Donner
mess with
movies.
New
Everything
York.
does, man. I mean, X-Men. You know,
Donner,
Bryan
I think-
Singer had that movie on like every day on set. You know,
Which came to show later because he obviously jumped hard into doing a Superman movie.
Yeah.
Instead of making X-Men 3 to the
Which-
detriment of X-Men 3.
and Superman.
Let's turn. Should we turn now to Superman Returns? Because I feel like this is going to be equally contentious in reverse now.
Let me tell you, I would watch Superman 4 10 times before I would watch even the cool parts of Superman Returns.
Interesting. Obviously there's a huge gap here, and they spent a long time trying to make different Superman movies. I don't know. Did you see the documentary about the Nicolas Cage?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
Is
I
it
want
on
to see-
iTunes yet?
I don't know.
Because
I don't-
It was only available on the guy's website. and
It's
I
on.
was like, I
Yeah.
wanna
It's
get my
it's
credit
on
card.
Prime Instant Watch.
I
I think
bu-
right
is it?
now. I believe so.
the death of Superman.
Yeah,
lives.
it is.
Yeah,
I bought
it's great.
I bought it from him at a convention. But yeah, we watched it. It's insane.
really excited to
It's
see it.
so good, and so that movie would have been
If
nuts.
you think Brando's weird with the bagel Kryptonians,
Wait till you see
John
what-
Peters
John Peters.
is-
I've seen.
Or what Nicolas Cage's idea of what Clark Kent would be like.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
It's
You
great.
get to
Well,
see some costume tests and stuff.
I've
it's
seen
insane.
that. That evening with Kevin Smith where he tells the story. And actually, in Man of Steel, did you guys pick up on that stuff? There's a polar bear. Mm-hmm. There's basically a giant robotic spider.
Yeah, at the end there.
Yeah.
And I think there's one other thing that was kind of a like.
What's great is in that documentary, you hear Kevin Smith tell that story again, but with interjections from John Peters cut in, like they're almost responding to one another. It's
I
cut
gotta-
back and
I gotta
forth.
watch that.
And
It's
John
really
Peters
great.
is a total psycho.
it's amazing.
He refutes everything Kevin Smith says, but yet the way he's saying it, you're like, no, everything he says is totally right, isn't it?
Well, and I mean, there's the whole Wild Wild West thing where like the spider and
Yeah,
I never said. He's just like, I never said that. I never
I have a
told him
good
to do those
appreciation
things.
for that movie.
I never
Wild
assaulted
Wild
the
West.
writers or production
people.
People don't talk about Wild Wild
I
West
don't-
enough.
I don't remember it. I saw it like one
It's
time.
kind of fun.
It certainly exists.
It's fun. It's kind of
But anyway, so
fun.
years go by and they try to make a Superman movie, because obviously it's a big property. Finally, they're able to do it. Was it 2006? I think.
Yeah.
Is
and remember J.J. Abrams was supposed to make one.
he
for a
wrote
while.
one. The script is
Yeah.
out there. I've read it.
Yeah, me
it's
too.
really interesting. It's
You don't say
it's a,
good, John. You say interesting.
It's a full-on alien invasion film.
Yeah.
With Kryptonians trying to take over the planet, pretty
Which
much.
is a lot of. I mean, look, as a First Contact movie, Man of Steel is great.
Yeah.
As a Superman movie,
Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting. Some of those elements did kind of find their way into Man of Steel.
I remember when Returns was. I followed every shred of that. Was
Me
in
too.
the heyday of my like, oh, I got it, and every shred of every video journal
Yep.
that he put out, every superherohype.com article that was unsubstantiated.
Yep.
And I remember when they first announced Ralph, and
Yeah.
I was like, all right, like the picture they showed, I was like, it wouldn't have been my first choice, but I can see how they're kind of going for the Christopher Reeve thing.
He looks a lot like Christopher
He does, and I think that's part of the problem is that like Christopher Reeve is Superman, but you don't then you're one step removed when you try to cast Christopher Reeve. And I think that's a big reason why Henry Cavill works as Superman, because he looks like he stepped out of a comic book. I mean, the
He
guy
looks
is
like Superman. Yeah,
Yeah,
he is Superman. In
exactly.
in that same kind. When you see him, you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, and I remember hearing Zack Snyder say that he was the only one that didn't look kind of ridiculous when they put him in the 78 suit, because that was part of the audition. I guess,
Interesting.
the screen
Yeah.
test or
Oh,
whatever.
I want to see that screen test so bad.
Yeah. So
We didn't talk about Christopher Reeve in that suit. He's not like super muscular, but he just looks powerful. He just
Yeah.
looks good.
Yep.
and it's a perfect blend of like his power comes from the sun.
Yeah,
it's
he
not
doesn't
from
need abs.
being a exactly.
And then you then you look at the wall of meat that is Cavill, who's just this like
Yeah, he got jacked for that.
it's insane. He is
Like Hugh
huge.
Jackman level of jacked.
Yeah,
I mean, we've never seen a Superman that big.
but I do like that he was more massive than he was like chiseled out.
Yes.
you know?
Right.
Like he didn't look like he was.
It was
about
like
to-
Superman for all seasons.
I was
like
gonna say he's
country fed.
almost getting into
Yeah.
that Tim Sale kind of
Yeah,
vibe. Yeah,
exactly.
This just like hulking man.
That Superman. Did you guys ever read Superman Kryptonite?
Yes, the Darwin Cook.
Yeah,
book?
it was originally like part of Superman Confidential. It's like what launched that title. That I love that. I think
That's
that's
a great
a great
one.
story.
Yeah.
And it was also the better Tim Sale version of Superman, because for all seasons he kind of looks like a thumb.
Well, yeah,
This
yeah,
one
yeah.
he was a little more streamlined.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think a lot of people talk about that one, but yeah,
It
Tim
was
Sale
good,
did.
yeah.
It's good, yeah. But yeah, so Superman Returns. We have Brandon Routh, who, no question. I mean, I was just listening to an interview with him yesterday where he was talking about when he first went into an audition when he was like 19 to be a model, and they were like, "Anybody ever tell you look like Chris Reeve? You look a lot like Chris Reeve. If they ever do Superman again, you should be the guy." And he just kept hearing that like for years and years. If they ever do Superman, you should be Superman. You should be Superman. And then he became Superman.
Yeah.
You're not a fan of what Routh
I
did?
like him.
Yeah.
I don't think they gave him much to chew on.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a little stiff in general as an actor, but I think he did a good job for what he had to work with. I'm really not a fan of how the suit looks in that movie. Like it's got the big moon boots, the tiny S, the collar that's too high.
The small S is an interesting decision.
Yeah,
in the movie.
and
it's
not-
not my favorite decision they make in that
No,
movie.
and I mean, like, Singer came out to say like, look, it's been all shapes and sizes throughout the years, and like, yeah, but it works better when it's big. I think it was too raised, like too three-dimensional.
I feel like that, especially after watching the documentary like Death of Superman Lives, because they tell that story of like how on set Singer had like the production diary of what like Superman Lives would have
Yeah,
been.
anytime anyone complained,
He was just like,
"Could've
"This
been
is what it could have been." So,
And
like, I feel like that suit was
not wrong.
was a direct response to what they had planned to do for Superman Lives, which was like the big, crazy neon, like
Gigantic
insane
S on the
one.
chest.
At that point, Superman had been around for like what 70 years,
Yeah.
and it was pretty like
Yeah.
you just kind of don't fuck with it, you know. And I think that they kind of did a little bit of both. They messed with it, but they left it the same, and it's a really bright, vibrant blue, and it's a light blue. It's almost like a more
Yeah.
cyan than it is like a navy, you know.
Absolutely.
And that with that real deep like crimson kind of maroon. I mean, it was pretty much maroon. It was an ugly combination. The cut of the suit was weird. Like I don't feel like it complemented his build the right way.
And an interesting thing he talked about in that same interview, I was listening to him because he's out promoting Legends of Tomorrow, where he's now another superhero. But they had padded muscles in that suit.
Yeah.
Yet he had built himself up like crazy
Yeah.
in training, and so he was even like, "Why are we putting these in there? My
did you-
arms are already huge."
So when we were at Rose City, and we know you were as well, did you meet Brandon Routh?
I
Did
didn't.
you-
No.
you and I got a
He-
chance to,
I'm-
Donovan.
I think I've said this on the show before, but I'm 6'2", he's 6'3", but because he's like 40 inches wider than I am, that 1 inch makes a big difference.
I will say-
And when he stood up to talk to us and shook my hand, it was like, this is like looking at Superman. Like,
It really-
you get that sense.
It really was, yeah.
And like, just like the whole, I don't think they gave him a lot to chew on, like you said, in that film. And the people they did, who are Kate Bosworth and Kevin Spacey, I think blew it big time.
Yeah.
I will
I have
agree
a
with you
lot
about
of-
Bosworth. I will
I have
fight
a-
you on Spacey.
I have a lot of issues with what those two people are doing. I think Brandon Routh is a very loving homage to Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
I wish they would set him apart a little bit more, but rewatching the Christopher Reeve ones, I'm like, wow, what Brandon Routh is doing is like, that's
Oh,
pretty
he was
seamless.
dead on.
He
with
was,
what?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really like him and he seems like a really nice guy too, which makes me like him as Superman even more.
And when we were talking about Superman, and he was like, "Oh." Like,
we told him how much we liked him as Superman.
He was like excited that we wanted to talk about that,
which is interesting because in that interview when he came up, it does sound like he doesn't get to hear that he did a good job as Superman very much. So when we were you were great as Superman, he was like, really?
I hope he comes back this year because I would love to meet a Superman.
Yeah, that was really my thing. It was like I've never met a Superman.
$20 says you get up to him. And the first thing you say is, "Hey, great job, man!" Like, there's no way. You get there and no way.
It really was like.
Oh, there's
Mr. Superman. It was like. I mean,
even if I didn't like him or in that movie, I wouldn't.
It's like the president, right? There's a certain like it carries a.
What kills me is that there are probably people who do that though.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, that's terrible.
No, and I think what's weird too is everything you see him in, it looks like he has black hair, and in Superman Returns, his hair is almost light brown. Like it's so brown in that movie. Like it's like the color of mine. It drove me crazy.
No, he's got black hair. I mean, he's got dark hair.
Yeah, and how light did it look in that movie?
I'd be interested to look at like totally whatever the like popular fashion scene was at the time. Like what in the zeitgeist made it so black hair was a faux pas for some reason.
Yeah, and they also I think it was the way they filmed it. I think the weird blue tint on everything maybe made it look lighter than it is or something. I don't know. The other, and like the stuntman had brown hair. Remember being like, even this guy has fucking brown hair, you know? I will say a lot of my issues with that movie are aesthetic, but also the whole illegitimate father, having that just killed it for me. Man.
Really?
When that piano went flying across the screen, I just, my fucking throat sunk into my chest. I was like, no, don't do this to me,
I do like that that's it, though. They don't do anything with it again.
For me,
that's worse.
Yeah, because they left so many loose ends with it.
Well, because it kind of acknowledges the like amnesia kiss, but not really.
Yeah, and it was
because it's Superman 3. I mean, there's no question Singer was trying to make Donner's Superman 3.
And that's
this guy worshipped at the altar of Richard Donner, unquestionably.
And to make a sequel to a movie almost 30 years after it came out is a bad idea. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, I respect what he was doing. I like the movie. I do actually. I like Spacey in it. I like a lot of this. I like what the kid does for Superman. I maybe don't love the piano being thrown across the.
Well, what is it? I guess. I've never seen the value in it, so
it gives him a deeper connection to not only like the people he's trying to save, but also the Earth, like period.
Are you going to defend this movie right now?
Oh my god, I kind of am.
By the way, talking to you on
this is the one thing you like.
No, talking to you on the car ride over, the fact that you're with me on Superman Returns blew my mind.
It's because it has like one of my favorite live action Lex Luthors. You know that, right?
Yeah, you and I both. Kevin Spacey. I feel like Spacey brings the menace that Hackman never had.
No, he's not grounded in anything.
No, and
he just screams.
I don't feel like they earned the menace because he goes from being another mustache twirler to shanking him with a shard of kryptonite. It was just like,
he's got the rage in him. This is the Luthor who's been in prison.
I feel like
who's really
let's
truly
watch that build more.
Yeah, like if they gave us
other people be afraid of Luthor.
If they gave us a Vincent D'Onofrio beating the guy by slamming his head in a car door moment, something early on to sort of give it a little bit of foreshadowing for that, it would have hit home a little bit more. They spend like 10 minutes at like a model train thing in a basement. What? Like that's not villainous or menacing at all. No. Like I will say when he turns it up at the end, when he yells wrong and all that, like. That's when you kind of go, all right, here's a glimpse of what we could have had.
Oh, yeah.
But he just seems so disinterested because he's surrounded by idiots. I will say Parker Posey would have been a better Lois Lane than...
Well, one of the interesting things that Routh said in that interview as well was that he screen tested with Kerry Russell, who I think would have been a great Lois Lane.
Yeah. I love Kate Bosworth. Like, I think she's... I've never seen her in anything I didn't like.
She's not a bad actress. I just don't... I think she was out of her depth in that part.
Well, and I don't think... I don't know. I don't think it was written well. She's kind of, I think it's another movie that kind of continues the trend of like sort of making one of the only females in the movie kind of a bad person. Like she's sort of two-timing on her husband. Like,
she's messing around with Superman. Like, she's
another thing we love of the the Christopher Reeve movies, people smoking all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, and she's
Constantly.
bitter.
Yeah.
She's this sort of bitter,
But
rejected lover.
The thing about
It's kinda
Kate Bosworth looks like she's about 20 too. Though that's
Yeah.
the other thing. I'm just like, this woman
well,
has
they
a
put her in
Pulitzer.
this really like drab, kind of bland, frumpy looking outfit. and,
That's
like,
the part of the movie
bad
that does
wig
not
and
work for
stuff.
me at all. Is anything with Lois Lane in that? I feel like it's just
Yeah.
no good. They have no chemistry. It's so interesting that they spent so much time doing chemistry reads, from what I gather, and that's what they landed on. Those two.
Yeah, they have the chemistry of like a raccoon and like a sack of potatoes.
And
Like,
he's
You know,
working.
Brian Singer was just
He's
still
a
wrapped up with
very
X-Men
cute
in his
raccoon.
head.
Yeah.
He had no focus for Superman. He was just like, I gotta get back to those X-Men. That's
He-
where my brain was
He
at.
yanked Cyclops away from the X-Men to
Yeah.
throw
who
him
was
in
probably the most likable character in that movie next
He's
to
great.
Jimmy Olsen.
there. Actually,
That's a great Jimmy. in
that Jimmy
movie.
Olsen is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And James Marsden's great. I
Yeah.
love that guy.
I love James Marsden.
James
too,
Marsden
yeah.
perpetually playing the other guy in movies.
Yeah.
Always seems to be the guy who's not the guy you want people to end up
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, you're the other guy. Sorry,
There
sorry,
were
James.
some things that were done really well in that movie. The score was reimagined very nicely by John Ottman. I remember the
yeah.
scene where he watches Lois go up the elevator with X-ray vision, and the way it plays on that old school John Williams like Superman Lois Lane score was really nice.
I love when he's getting recharged by the sun and just like the swelling of the music.
Yeah.
from that is just like
You know, a big problem with that movie is it didn't have enough Superman moments.
Yep.
I mean, you know,
I mean, obviously, what I would point to, what everybody points to, is him saving that plane.
yes. And do you guys know that Gabe Hardman is the one like basically responsible for that?
No.
So a lot of people, I think, well, I don't know how many people know this, but Gabriel Hardman, who's one of the best artists working in comics,
Yeah,
he has a great series, Invisible Republic, from Image right now.
Fantastic
with his
book.
wife Karina. They co-write and he draws it. My good buddy Jordan Boyd colors it beautifully. Go read it.
Great book, yeah.
He is like Christopher Nolan's main storyboard guy.
Oh, very
Yeah.
cool.
And he also storyboarded Spider-Man 3 and Superman Returns. And he was basically told he needs to save a plane. And so he pretty much choreographed that whole
man.
sequence of like
Sweet.
the wing snapping off, all that stuff.
That might be the best action sequence
it-
in any of these movies.
Yes,
It's
by far.
it's incredible.
It shows he's a little bit rusty. Like they
Him-
get into physics a little bit more with it. Like, so that scene, the bullet to the eye thing.
Oh, one of my favorite shots
That
of
was
Superman in
great.
anything. One of those things you never even think about. Like, his
Yeah.
eye would be indestructible too.
Yeah, but then the major problem is that like when they Superman's back, it's like a newsreel afterthought, and you just see him kind of like smile and wave and fly away, and it's like what?
Yeah, it's
The elevator scene was cool when he changes in the elevator.
Yep.
I really dug that.
all
I mean,
the Ralph stuff. I think works.
yeah, he
so
was
well.
an excellent Clark Kent.
Yeah.
That's where he looks the most like Reeve to me.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was great. Definitely some great moments, but for the most part, I love also when he's like, I have to go back. It's just a foregone conclusion.
Yep.
But there just wasn't enough Superman in it. I feel like the trailer for Hancock had more cool like superpowered moments than the entire 2
It's
hours.
interesting. It's interesting you mentioned this because this is my complaint against Dark Knight Rises. There's not enough Batman in it. for me.
I agree with that. There's not enough Batman in that movie at
There's
all.
not like any Batman in the Dark Knight.
Oh, I
There's-
disagree.
There's
with that.
there's a motorcycle car chase with Batman in it, and that's like all of it.
No.
all of
There's
it.
there's
a lot of Batman.
there's a lot of Batman.
In
The-
Dark Knight,
Yep.
The
See,
stuff
you
with
get him in
the
a nightclub beating
Scarecrow
up
at the
people,
beginning.
which I
the
love.
Oh
part where
man,
he's
when he
going
drops
from the nightclub,
Eric Roberts and
Yeah.
breaks his ankles, awesome.
the whole
you
part
guys
where he
ever
takes
notice-
down that tower full of like Joker minions.
well, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He saves Rachel and then cut to another scene. You never see him go back and take out the Joker people.
Oh, not that scene. The
the end.
with
When-
the
and
hostages.
like,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's like 2 seconds.
that's like most of the third act of the movie.
It's that great Batman way of like the way he calculates doing it with the explosives and everything.
You get him in Hong Kong.
That
diving
part
off
is
the building.
awesome.
and I love. You know what? I love the Bruce Wayne moments in that movie
I think
more
it's
than
the bad
Batman
taste
stuff.
of Aaron Eckhart that is just killing that for me.
You and Aaron
He's not
Eckhart.
very good in that movie,
He's
is he?
horrific in that
Like
movie.
he's really kind of
all of the Two-Face stuff is miserable in that movie.
like I like him as an actor too,
He's a
but I
great
feel like
actor.
he was very.
He did nothing.
He was the most acty.
The whole Rachel and him thing with the 2 different bombs like doesn't work.
I don't know. I thought that stuff was
He
good.
just is now angry and now flips a coin. I mean, just like
I thought he had the
they
coin
grounded.
earlier. I don't know.
Here's the thing: is I like to see Harvey at the point of the brink that a little something like somebody throwing acid on his face and maybe his family crumbling, he is just like goes for it. And he's no longer no remnants of Harvey remain, basically.
I feel like he turned into like, I'm shooting people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
but
He turned more into vigilante than he did gangster, which
what
I
I wanted
liked,
is I
actually.
wanted him to be an ally in that movie, and the beginning of the third one is when you get
Yeah, but
Two-Face.
Nolan doesn't make movies like that,
I know he
unfortunately.
did. We
The
just
guy
saw that.
makes one at a time. Like, that's his whole thing.
You
It's
know,
like,
though,
I don't have this.
I think my biggest complaint with Two-Face in that movie is that I feel like they went a little too far with just how disfigured he got.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is messed up looking. in that movie.
you wouldn't be able to walk.
Oh, with the
around.
horrible sinew over his lower
yeah,
jaw
like
and
he
stuff.
was. I mean, it's one thing to have like terrible burns, but like he's got an exposed eyeball. Like it's just kind of like
Yeah.
Yeah, he would not be able to
it was.
function.
Yeah, it was on a level. And also the other thing too is like he didn't talk like somebody who had half a mouth. Yeah, like he didn't talk like he only had like
You
one.
seen
side of
Boardwalk
his
Empire?
lips. No.
There's a character on there who has half a face.
And does he talk? Yeah, I mean,
The guy would like put cotton and stuff on the side of his mouth to do that and pull his whole mouth to the side.
Yeah, you
And
can't
it's brilliant.
form such clear enunciated consonants. And,
Like
you know,
a week after all this happens.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was
less
like,
than that.
He's like, I was in the hospital for 2 days, gonna get myself a gun.
I mean, I'm sure he was hopped up on all kinds of morphine or whatever. Like,
I would like to have seen a scene of that actually in there where he's like popping crazy amounts of painkillers
Yeah.
or something.
Also, that pillow would have been a lot dirtier when he like turns over and he's like,
Oh, it's been
yeah.
covered in fleshy skin bits.
Because
of
that's the
blood.
one thing that Nolan decided to go CG on. That was all CG.
Yeah.
That Two-Face effect.
Yeah. Does
Interesting,
not
but that's a
work.
Batman movie, which we could go on for all day.
I do love the Bruce
better?
Wayne stuff in that. I love when
Yep.
he dismantles that shotgun like he
Awesome.
was just,
I love when Bruce Wayne gets to be badass like that.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, when you see like, oh yeah, he's still the same guy. He's got those skills, even though he's in a tux.
yeah. And do you guys think that Eric Roberts looks like a John Romita Jr. drawing? Because it's to me, it's like uncanny. I mean,
He does.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's true. So
Returns.
Returns. Anything else you want? I mean, like I know some people talk about how slow it is. I kind of like how
I just feel like
sad it
Superman
is.
should be on a larger scale than like a boat.
Yeah, I mean, I
know?
I totally see what you're saying
A little
about
too
that.
localized. And
Sure.
we
And
needed
And
more
I
cool
will say that
Superman stuff.
my problem with Superman in the movie is his solution to every problem in that movie is lift a thing. Mm-hmm. Every
That
single
being-
time
that being
is
said,
lift a thing.
that's
Don't
the
punch a
other-
thing.
kinda
Don't
like
fly
him lifting that
fast.
thing, though.
He just lifts a thing.
I do love Superman lifting stuff. I do love Superman averting disasters, and I feel like we had. That's another problem I think with Man of Steel was that it was a response to he didn't punch anything.
Oh, totally.
He punched
They
all
went
of the
way
things.
I mean,
too
let's
far
sort of
in the other
segue
direction.
into Man of Steel. We've talked about quite a bit here, but yeah, this is a punchy Superman.
Yes.
this is a brawler. I think I even heard Zack Snyder use the term brawler in an interview.
I mean, I like that he doesn't know how to fight
Yeah,
because he's never thrown a punch in his
He's
life.
basically just clubbing people with his fists.
Yeah, I like that he's bad at it. I like that he's losing a lot of this. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like the only thing that helps him is that he's got the edge over them because he is used to having powers.
Right.
Also, you threatened his mom.
That was
That
great.
scene was pretty great,
But
where
then
he's
he
just like,
destroys his neighbor's
Yeah.
grain silo, and I'm like, all right, well, that was a dick move, you know?
yeah. He's
most of downtown
He's
Smallville is
reckless.
You know, and
Very
then I've heard
reckless.
Goyer's defense, David Goyer, the screenwriter, his defense is this is Superman doesn't know how to be Superman. I get that. I don't hate the fight at the end. It goes on maybe a little bit too long. Like you could have cut that down a bit.
Well, and they're just, and I mean, I feel like they kind of maybe hinted at like, oh, these buildings are empty, but
yeah, there's some dropped line about evacuating things.
yeah,
What?
they should have kept
Yeah,
that in because
it's in
if
there.
you see, Avengers 2, like, quick throwaway line about it, and that's all you need.
Well, the whole
I mean?
third act of Avengers 2 is we got to clear this island of
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
Robots are second.
Oh, I'm
Innocent-
sorry, the first Avengers, I think they have like a quick.
Yeah,
throwaway.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. I don't think that Superman learns to be Superman so much from being Superman as he does from his upbringing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the main thing. He had, two Robin Hood dads telling him, like, one was
It's true.
one was like one was like, you can be anything, live up to this means hope.
That broke me a little bit. I'm sorry. I just put that together.
Both Robin Hood.
And the other one is like, hide, and I just feel like
I think both of those guys. I mean, look, there's some issues maybe here and there, but I think both of those guys are incredible in that movie. Costner and Crow.
Look, the casting for this movie,
Everybody actually is amazing.
It was 100% on point.
Yeah,
I love Fishburne as Perry White. I think that's brilliant.
awesome because he feels like that old newsman who's been around. He's a war horse.
Yeah, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, great as Mom Pa Kent.
Yeah, perfect. They feel that Americana. I mean, they're number one. They're icons of the '80s but like American '80s films.
Yeah,
and
you think of Field of Dreams. I mean, Kevin Spacey in a cornfield.
When I heard he was cast, when I heard he was cast, it's just like that's perfect.
Yeah, it makes
that
sense.
is perfect because he was Jonathan Kent in Field of Dreams, basically.
That whole the scene of him dying was there. First of all, there are 10 different ways that he could have saved him,
right?
Without
Sure.
But aside from that, the brilliance of his father always dying from a heart attack and all the other iterations
is
the thing he couldn't save him from.
Yeah.
So when it's like, well, he could have saved him, you're just like being negligent,
right?
Or maybe that's the time to tell everyone, you love your father enough, save him, and then be like, well, I guess cat's out of the bag,
Yeah.
It just seems so like especially in an age where people coming out about their sexuality is like a thing that I mean, people struggle with that for since the dawn of time. I'm sure. Like, we don't need more, reinforcement of like, no, stay in the closet.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I mean, I do. I mean, I kind of like the. I mean, once again, maybe it's not perfect throughout the movie, but I do kind of like the idea about like it's got to be the right time. To a certain extent, I like that, and I love. I mean, it was in the trailers. One of the things that made me tear up in that trailer about like you got to choose what kind of man you're going to be.
Whatever it is,
it's going to change the world. Yeah,
that's great. And like, but I feel like even that is still kind of neutral. Like, you could be.
That's Pa Kent saying, "You'll figure it out. Don't worry."
Yeah, like the purpose of Pa Kent and Ma Kent is to be like, this is how you be a good person.
Right. Ma Kent actually has maybe the best scene with young Clark, where he's in the closet at the school.
Yeah,
and he can't. The world's too big, and you got to make it small.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, more of that.
But extrapolate that out to like, okay, make the world small and like deal with it one problem at a time. Be a good person while you're doing that.
Yeah, because when you see him save a bus full of kids without provocation from his parents, and he's kind of scolded for it. So it's like.
Yeah, that behavior's not reinforced.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically told his whole life, like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Even if it means me dying, don't do it. And then so by the time he does, and then he ends up, like, destroying everything, it's just kind of like, you
wonder what Pa Kent would have thought about that.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have done it, kid.
I mean, he saves a couple people. He saves the guy from falling from the helicopter, and you okay?
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing that in a TV spot and being like, oh, that's Superman.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you first... when the movie first starts, you see him doing nothing but saving people.
Yeah, when he's not in the suit.
Yeah,
like
which is,
the
I mean, because that's classic Superman.
That scene was great when he crunches that door, and, on fire. I love it. Yeah,
He's just standing in the flaming oil rig. Come with me if you want to live.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah,
that's kind of reluctance of like, well, I guess.
And I love this idea that he's almost like been building a myth of this guy who like is indestructible and can save people and does all this stuff. That's all that stuff.
I love the whole scene on the ship, the way that they basically made that the fortress and, the way he gets... That's the best suit origin story we have.
Yeah. Because there's no explanation of it in the Reeve movies.
Exactly.
He just has it.
He just has it. And then...
But the idea that all Kryptonians are, like, wearing an undersuit like that underneath all their armor.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, but, like, I loved Krypton in that movie. Like, all that Krypton stuff is great. And, like, Zod and his coup and... once again, you get a much better idea of Zod. You get a much clearer vision of Jor-El.
Yeah. And he even, I love when the simulation of him or whatever opens his like sort of jacket thing to show him like, it was kind of the classic like opening of the shirt, but it kind of almost gave that an
on our world. The symbol means hope.
Yeah. And I remember at one point going, wait, how did he get a suit? Like, how did he get a specific House of L suit? And then I realized, because he put the key in and it fabricated it for him there, The stuff that doesn't make sense in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go fight this thing in the middle of the Indian Ocean where there's no one in danger of it. You guys all stay here and try to figure out the situation above the most populated city in the country.
That's where you send Stabler to fight the...
Or just leave it there, because if you disable one, you disable the other.
But that was the whole thing with him fighting the thing in the Indian Ocean, was that was what was causing the gravity pulses that was like, crushing everything.
Once again,
but
like
if he
him
destroyed
in
the one over Metropolis, like, wouldn't that do the same thing? Because when he shuts the other one down, that one just dies, and they're like, he did it.
Yeah,
you know,
I do like the physicality of him doing that, because it's very Superman,
Yes.
like him fighting against.
I feel
the
like
force.
their plan was
like,
great right up
but-
until Zod wasn't on their on the like the mothership.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like they're
Originally, that was the ending. He was going to get tossed in with everybody else, and then they were like, "No, it needs more."
Yeah,
And then
Interesting.
Chris Nolan actually was like, I read this somewhere. He was like, "You can't have him snap his neck." And then I think he was just kind of like, "Whatever, fuck you guys made this bed. You're like, you know,
yeah.
like I'm out."
Yeah, it's really interesting. I get very inconsistent ideas of how involved Nolan was, because people love to throw his name about, but it seems like he seems pretty hands off from what I
Yeah.
gather.
I think they probably brought him in a supervisory way,
Mm-hmm.
and then it seems like they probably got to a point where they were like, "Yeah, we're still going to do this," and he was like, "All right, I got paid," you know. But the other big issue I have with that movie is like, wait a second, so you guys want to reboot the Kryptonian population?
Mm-hmm.
To do that, you need the Codex.
Yeah,
I get that, right?
yeah, it's a MacGuffin, but yeah.
So why do you need to make this place less awesome for yourselves to do that? Like, you can fly, and you have heat vision, and you're super strong here.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it as is and breed a race of super people. Like,
Yeah.
why do you need to like make this place suck?
Yeah.
You know, like,
I mean, I don't know. There is something about when you bring up that programming that Zod has, is like Zod is programmed to bring back Krypton as it was. This is my mission.
yeah, I guess there's like a purist.
I mean,
know.
that's kind of how I
he
read
even
that.
brings up like in that movie, he's just like, so you would have us like raising people in suffering just to get to where you are, whereas we can make our world and be like at peace from the get go. Because I mean, there's a couple of lines in the movie of just like Clark growing up had a messed up childhood, because like when he was an infant he could like barely breathe because his body needed to adapt to the like oxygen and stuff. So like you'd figure that all Kryptonians born on Earth, if they didn't change the atmosphere, would have like God knows what the infant mortality rate would
They
be.
wouldn't just be
That's true,
born
yeah.
as the gods that Superman is.
Although, but they've never. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. I was gonna say they've never really been born because they had those birthing matrix chambers or whatever. But I guess that wouldn't matter because either way, you're still fresh to that. You know?
Yeah.
I guess that fleshes that out a little bit more for me. But I still think, like, I don't know, why not just, you know,
Why not
conceive-
find another planet? They have a
well-
spaceship that has a warp drive.
But here's the
Yeah.
other thing, though, is why in all of the Superman mythos, if ancient long dead Kryptonians had figured out, oh, a yellow sun would give us powers, would they not like move people to go live on planets in a yellow sun solar system?
Because I
it
don't
doesn't
know that
have to be Earth.
I don't know that they wanted powers necessarily. It's not like
Why
I
would you want powers?
But I
Makes no
don't get
sense.
this. I mean, Jor-El knows what will happen, because there's even that line when they're sending about like, you know, it's just like, you'll know what will happen
But
to
even
him.
then, it was like they were kind of like hypothesizing. Like they
Yeah.
took the information that they knew to make like an educated guess, I
Right.
guess. But it wasn't
Because
like,
that's
I feel
the-
like
the
in
ship that he
Superman 1,
finds-
Brando's like, this will happen.
oh yeah, he's like
Yeah.
very aware of
Yeah,
you know,
like
Because in Man of Steel, you have that ship that he finds was like a scout ship that was
Right.
sent ahead
Yeah.
years and years before.
and why? So what happened to them? You know, it's like
There's going to be a TV show that David Goyer is running called Krypton that will
Yeah.
probably explain that.
true. Well, and if
What?
you remember that one, like
doing
stasis
that.
chamber was open.
It's about Superman's
on that
grandfather.
ship, so
yeah.
I don't know.
Hold on.
Oh, there's a lot of theories about Supergirl
Yeah,
with
Like,
that.
Maxwell Lord, I think, was one of them. Isn't he the one who's, or no, Vandal Savage?
Vandal Savage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe
Oh, if he was
uh,
Kryptonian? Interesting.
well, that they're saying, you know, maybe that's why. That was just one theory, like
Yeah.
an open chamber.
Sure,
in the ship.
yeah.
He's an immortal. Or whatever.
There's threads. I mean, and everything now is obviously been. They're very
Were
much
there
going into a shoot.
skeletons in those though?
I feel like there was a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. That's okay. That's probably what it was then.
Because there's a whole thing where Lois Lane's like going through the ship and she sees a couple like skeletons in the
That's
pods.
right. That's right.
Which speaking, I mean, I think this is our best Lois Lane.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Amy
I
Adams.
really like her in it. She probably wouldn't have been my first choice, but like that being said, I never would have picked Heath Ledger for the Joker.
Yeah.
Right.
Obviously, that worked out well.
But I mean,
you know?
this is a Lois who, number one, feels like a reporter.
yeah.
Like she's got the investigative reporter thing. Like the fact that she like Sherlock's out who Superman is
Yeah.
is like one of the best parts of that movie. I feel like.
Oh yeah.
But then she's like, Clark! It's like, and he's in his suit
Yeah.
at his, and like, I'm at my mom's house. Right now. What are you doing down here like this? Like with the cop right there, like yelling his name, and he's like,
She's
clearly
outing
Superman.
him.
yeah.
Yeah. Although, I mean, maybe the cop knows that Clark Kent's house is
Feels
there
like
and
everyone in
doesn't think
Smallville
that
kind of
that's him.
knows.
True.
Yeah, I mean, like Pete, you know, is
Right.
foregone conclusion.
The guy at IHOP knows.
I
so
do
figure
kind of like that
everybody
scene where
knows.
Pete Ross like recognized him as like, oh, hey, that guy.
Yeah, yeah. It also felt weird though. It's like you're not gonna put a button on that, like.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, like I like that. Yeah, I do like that idea, but you know, there could have been maybe a little bit more there. We got to wreck that Denny's though.
Batman versus
Yeah.
Superman. Pete is going to go tell Bruce Wayne, "Hey, I know who he is."
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
Take him down.
That's the
Opening
linking
scene.
between them.
and that's the other interesting thing about Man of Steel is obviously this is meant to be the Iron Man of the DC universe.
Yeah.
This is kicking it off.
Yeah.
Which is we really
What's that reaction?
Again, I'm not sold.
Not
Like
this
what,
again.
what? I'm just not sold on like us going straight into a Justice League type thing right away.
They needed a follow up to Man of Steel.
I feel
before.
like, yeah.
Yeah, that movie left a lot of loose threads, and I know they're
And they
going to
needed it within a year or two after, as opposed to
Yeah,
What are we now? How many years removed are we from Man of Steel?
4,
3,
Is it
3.
only 3?
it came out in 2014
so 2.
Did it really?
or 2013, right?
Yeah, so 3.
Yeah, June.
Oh,
of
it feels
3,
like
yeah.
way
3,
longer
3
than
feels.
that.
Two, yeah, what? Yeah,
That's right.
2
I was
and a
gonna
half.
say 3.
I guess, right?
Yeah,
It'll be
roughly.
3 this summer.
Yeah. Because we're not that far out from Batman v Superman. So
No?
the end of March.
Oh shit, it's like 2 months away. Almost.
Yeah, Batman v Superman. Because I did kind of want to gauge your. We've seen some material from it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great. Like
Yeah.
I can't be any more disappointed at this point than,
Mm-hmm.
than after Man of Steel. You know, like, yeah. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm, the trailers look cool.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
I want to see Batfleck.
I like the casting. A lot
Yeah.
of people, I don't get the hate towards Ben Affleck. He's a good actor. And
Yeah.
he makes good movies.
He's
so-
great. He also and I can't remember who pointed this out to me, but I'm like, he looks the most like the drawing of Bruce Wayne of any actor that's played
Absolutely.
that. He
Such a
is
chin.
Bruce Wayne.
There was he's got the best Batman chin. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
It's just like I remember saying years ago that I was like, Affleck would be a good Batman. Like
There
when they were
was
doing
a-
Batman
do
Begins.
you remember the Superman Batman comic that started with like the Jeff Loeb?
Yeah.
yeah.
The, Loeb and McGinnis, right?
Yeah, there was I don't remember who wrote it, but Shane Davis I think drew it.
Okay,
and,
yeah.
And there was an opening where I think they were making a Superman Batman movie,
Oh.
and Ben Affleck was playing Batman.
Is that right?
Thing.
Oh, wow.
Either that or there was an allusion to it, the same way that like
Interesting.
in the Ultimates they were like Sam Jackson would play me,
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
Matthew McConaughey,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? A lot of people don't think about this, but Hollywoodland, Ben Affleck was Superman, so he's
Yeah.
like the first actor to be playing Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, he's
Live
just,
action
He's
in
on
some
that. He's on
big
that
movie.
rare list of people who played 2 superheroes too,
Yeah.
because he also did Daredevil.
And actually, Diane Lane was in that movie too.
yeah, she was.
Yeah.
Which I've seen.
realize that.
I've seen several people point that out, that the rift here is that he slept with his mom. People have put that. I've seen a few internet things where they put a picture of them in bed together, and then a picture of a scowling Henry Cavill, and then the two of them fighting.
You know, the other thing, the other casting bit that I loved about Man of Steel is that it looks like, I think her name's Ayelet Zur, the woman who played his mom.
Yeah.
If her and Russell Crowe had a baby, he might look like Henry Cavill. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that was really good. Like,
Yeah.
casting.
Which is
in that.
interesting because I think she was the second choice. I remember it was Julia Ormond who was supposed to be.
which was also
Lara?
a great choice.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, I'm not super jazzed about Jesse Eisenberg
Is that right?
in the trailer that we saw. I like the idea. I mean, as soon as they announced him, I was like, that's great.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because he could be that sort of like, young tech guy.
Which is kind of what Luther would be today.
yeah, like what if Zuckerberg was,
More
went down
evil
the
than
dark
he was,
side
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, like, but he's very kind of, you would not want to pick a fight with this person. Like,
Well, and it's interesting because I feel like there's going to be almost a dual the duality
Yeah,
to
like
Luther.
that's
Because there's
facade
other
he
scenes
puts up.
where I love what he's doing in that.
Like the red capes are coming thing. And
That's
all that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and I'm just like, oh, this guy's going to kill it in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just an amazing actor,
He's
obviously.
really good.
You watch something like The Social Network, and he's just incredible in that.
What's that line he has like in front of Lois Lane? I want to say it's
Something about
insanity is just like a 3-syllable word for like ideas people are too dumb to
small
understand.
yeah, like that's Lex Luthor. That
Yeah.
line right there. It's just like, I'm not insane. You're insane. You know. Like,
And I mean,
You
look,
just don't see it.
if you watch that newest trailer and you don't get chills when the three of them are standing there like ready to face
Yeah.
off against
That Trinity
Doomsday.
is amazing.
that shot. Oh, and you know, I know some people had a problem when they cast Gal Gadot, but like I'm like, that's Wonder Woman.
Oh, I love that she's got an accent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I love that she's not
Yeah.
American. Like,
yeah.
That makes sense.
and you know, she was like, to some degree, did some kind of. I think did like military. Like she was a
Yeah.
trainer in the Israeli.
Well,
like,
she's like legit badass.
yeah, like she
Yeah.
was actually like a combat specialist on some level.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you guys see the sneak peek footage?
Yeah.
I
from Wonder
did.
Woman?
Yeah.
It looks really like graded out, which
Yeah.
I'm not a super fan of.
But she looks pretty awesome in
awesome,
it.
yeah.
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 I don't know. And then there's the now Suicide Squad trailer out as well.
which looks like I'm in, man.
yeah, I know that.
You know,
that-
yeah. I mean, I'm with everybody else. I think all the Joker tattoos are stupid looking.
yeah, but but I'm also
It makes
what
sense.
what he looks like he's doing. I'm kind of on board with his performance
Yeah.
though.
I mean,
I'm actually
Jared
fully on
Leto
board.
was going to be amazing regardless. you
That
know?
was another thing where I read that and just like, oh, that's perfect.
Were we reading though that he was like terrifying to be on set with?
I was just
He
reading an
wouldn't
interview
break
with David
character,
Ayer,
and
the
people
director,
wouldn't
was saying
I wouldn't doubt
was
it. Yeah.
People were
scared
like,
of him.
We
Yeah.
don't want to.
Did you
Mailing
hear
like
that-
dead mice to Margot Robbie or something.
Yeah,
Was he
no,
really?
to Will Smith
Oh,
because he was honing in on his girl.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't like
crazy.
that. Yeah, anybody would write like creepy love letters to Margot Robbie and stuff as the Joker to Harley.
Oh,
Yeah, it seems
talk
like
about method, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like, yeah. No.
That's a real rich man, poor man thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you can either be like super wealthy and do that, and it's like, oh, that's charming. But like, if you're super poor and you do that, it's like, this guy's a fucking psycho.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I do like they did like it's like method. It's like no, maybe he's gone insane and he's like creepily in love with Margot Robbie now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like
we don't
not
know. He
having-
just broke.
It's like not having a wallet. Like you either don't have a wallet because you're so poor you don't have a wallet, or you're so rich you don't need
that's
one.
what
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
what I really appreciate about the Cesar Romero Joker. Is like that guy turned it off at the end of the day. He figured out how to tune in and tune out.
See that? It was like a meme or something somebody made, and it was Cesar Romero Joker, and it had the tattoo across his forehead, and it said "secret mustache."
That's amazing. I have not
was
seen
pretty
that,
great.
but that's yeah. I was gonna say that guy was pretty turned off even when he was the Joker because he's like, oh, there's a mustache under
I
here.
love his Joker
I do
stuff.
too, but it's
That was branding. That was his early on. He's like, I can't shave this.
no. That's what. Yeah, he said it's iconic. Everyone knows me by my mustache.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I mean,
paint
these
over
things
it. No
don't
one knows.
grow back.
Did you guys ever hear about how Michael Caine, the first time he ever saw Heath Ledger as the Joker, was when they did that fundraising party scene?
Oh
And
no.
he came off the elevator, and he was like,
Oh wow.
shit. Like, I guess, I don't know if they had to do a second take, but I
Wow.
saw a thing where he was talking about it, and he
That's
was like,
awesome. I love stuff like that. Like Ridley Scott didn't let the chest bursting scene in Alien. They
Yeah.
didn't know it was going to happen. They were just filming that scene and then
Director of the year's best comedy, by the way.
Yeah, what was that? That movie was hilarious. It's funny.
yeah.
It's funny in some places.
The idea of Matt Damon being nominated for best actor in a comedic.
And he won
Yeah, and it's like, and isn't he nominated for just best actor period in the Oscars?
at the Oscars, yeah.
I'm like, was it really that much of a stretch?
He kind of played Matt Damon.
Yeah, I mean, really, like, you know,
He's really likable in that
People
movie.
like Matt Damon. How many movies have we seen Tom Hanks in play Tom Hanks? And it's always like,
He
oh,
doesn't
but
have an
we-
Oscar for those movies,
but we
though. He
love
has an
him.
Oscar for
I
Philadelphia
I
and
feel
Forrest
like,
Gump.
I feel like Oscars
That's
are for
true.
movies where like an actor transforms themselves,
I mean,
or like they're really
like Ledger getting it for Dark Knight. It's just like,
yeah.
I'll say this
You
about the
don't see
margin
him
though.
in there.
That opening sequence where he's like prying the thing out of his stomach is riveting.
He's great in that
Yeah.
movie.
And
No
it is a
question
great
about
movie.
it. It's
I
a
mean-
great movie. He's fantastic.
Highly enjoyed that.
But you know what I
they
will say,
picked him
too?
because we like him.
Yeah.
I listened to the audiobook of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually is funny. I was listening to it and I was telling my girlfriend about it. And I was like, picture it like Matt Damon's character from Interstellar if he was like stranded there and like a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a week later they announced like Matt Damon is playing. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But
Best part of Interstellar, in my
Can you
opinion,
do
is that whole
with,
sequence with Matt Damon.
Can you listen to like some Wolverine kind of thing and just think about Tom Hardy forever?
that's a guy who disappears into a role.
Yeah.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if he looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen The Drop?
No.
Oh
my
yeah.
God.
Oh, he's amazing in
He's
that.
so he got
Not
this
enough people
Brooklyn
saw them.
accent, you know, and he's just really like talks like this the whole movie, and it's just like you forget that you're looking at Tom
Yep.
Hardy.
Wow.
Or even that movie Lock. Did you see that
yeah,
one?
it's just him in a car.
It's just him in a car, but the accent, you know, he's doing like a different, you know, provincial dialect accent kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
I feel like I've never seen the real Tom Hardy. Or friggin', I mean, I'm a big Star Trek fan. Star Trek Nemesis, he plays Captain Picard.
he's like a young Picard or something.
He's like an
in it.
evil. He's an evil clone of Captain Picard.
That's crazy.
And some I've talked to people who's like, that was Tom Hardy. Like, yeah, because he just became Patrick Stewart in a movie.
I mean, in Bane, as Bane,
Mm-hmm.
he can only really emote with his eyes, and
He
like
does
he's
it?
so.
And I mean, the take on Bane of not like big luchador. muscly-
Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like he's just
I
like,
miss Luchador Bane.
You like luchador Bane?
I like almost like Oxford educated Bane though. It's
Yeah,
like,
he's
oh,
got this
yes.
like.
Yeah,
I love that they give us that
Area
voice.
Day
I'm not going to
kinda-
lie.
Yeah.
Hello, Batman.
I loved.
One more thing to do with
That-
my Sean
I
Connery.
know that.
He's a great.
That
again,
is
great
none of my
Bond
problems
villain
with
in
what.
that movie.
Oh yeah.
None of my problems with Rises have to do with him. He's amazing.
How do you guys feel about Skyfall?
I liked it a lot.
If that old guy at the end was replaced with Sean Connery, it would be the best movie ever.
Originally, they tried to get.
I
him.
know.
that
I
would
still
be-
think that would be
That'd
weird.
be amazing. I really like Skyfall.
I love Skyfall.
Yeah.
It's one of the best looking movies I've ever seen. First of all, like
Yeah.
the cinematography. in
No-
that is
nominated
amazing.
for cinematography and rightfully so. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
It was. I love the twist on like the Bond villain with the physical deformity. You know, like they kind of.
I thought Bardem was amazing.
He
in that.
should have been nominated for an
Yep.
Oscar for that movie.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. Like that's a guy who transformed for Is
Oh,
it the
yeah.
only Bond film with Komodo dragons?
I think
I think
so.
it might be.
And I think that one-
takes a cake.
Got my vote.
Spectre brought in way more of the classic Bond elements, but Skyfall had the like perfect balance between like the gritty Casino
Yeah.
Royale, but then there's enough of like a Goldfinger kind of movie in there.
Yeah.
That it's the perfect hybrid before it just rolls over into Spectre, which I really enjoyed as well. But where it's like, okay, now we are in like Christoph Waltz's Blofeld.
Yeah.
And sorry, spoilers,
He was,
everybody. Yeah.
and look, Christoph Waltz is perfect casting as a Bond villain.
Oh,
But,
it feels like the man was born to be a Bond villain.
yeah, but then when you actually see him, like he looks like he's there's that scene in that white room where Bond is in the chair and he's at the computer, and he looks like a dentist who came in on his day off to give his friend a filling. Like,
Yeah.
Well,
he's
the
got- he's
fact
wearing-
that Bond's in an evil dental chair, might
yeah,
add,
but,
be added.
but he's like wearing loafers with no socks. And he's
Yeah.
like,
I just want a T-shirt now that says "Evil Dental
I
Chair."
do like his Nehru jacket though. That feels very
Yeah.
classic Bond.
Yeah.
Well, but I feel like they've tried to force that connection too. And also, who's the guy who has like an inkjet printer who went around like posting up pictures like in the
Oh,
old
people have talked
MI6,
about
like-
that. Yeah, like somebody really set up that. I mean, which to be fair, you could accuse a lot of Bond movies.
Sure,
of like,
I mean,
this is a
I
very
guess-
elaborate death trap.
When I guess Spectre is like the all-seeing. They have a guy who
They
puts
probably
up
have like
menacing-
20 guys whose
Yeah.
job is just to put up pictures of James Bond to scare him.
Yeah, but I just man, and it also
Yeah, pays the bills.
They're gonna unionize.
What
They're not-
henchman union?
Yeah,
They're
they
like,
don't-
hey,
they-
we got to get another guy out here because we're walking the streets,
And
but
can-
we can't do it ourselves.
Can we get
Like,
dental while we're at it? I mean,
Yeah,
we've been at this for a
Like,
while.
I have the chair.
Yeah.
But that was one of my
asking for
other
dental
problems
now.
with that movie is like making I'm the architect of all your pain
Mm-hmm.
kind of like takes away from like the badassness of like Silva in the last movie.
Yeah.
Like if he's just working for a bigger guy, it's kind of like all right.
Which,
There's always the bigger fish.
which
Yeah.
I mean, they are taking it back to those Connery
Really?
because
You're going to quote episode 1? How dare you?
How dare
I
you
just
indeed?
love Casino Royale too. That's a perfect movie.
Yep.
That might be the best Bond film
absolutely
ever.
absolutely
Like
Bond Begins. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
same vibe you get from Batman Begins. You get
Totally.
with that movie.
it's I think it's a perfect movie. Like I can't
It's-
find anything
it's
wrong with it.
amazing.
It's so good. I would cut about 3 minutes of poker playing. That's it.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's perfect.
Well, you could get a lot more Baccarat playing. I don't know if you've read any of the novels. But,
Yeah, and the whole thing is like nobody understands Baccarat, but like
Baccarat is so easy
it's
to
like
grasp.
blackjack, right? I mean, like they explain it in the novel.
I
Casino
remember
Royale
reading the book
very
and being
clearly.
like, if anything, it's easier to grasp than poker.
Yeah, it is a lot like blackjack.
Yeah.
And
I
I
can't
don't
remember what it is.
understand
Like
poker.
everything adds up to 7. Is that it, or something like that, or
I think
9?
it's I think it's 9.
Yeah. But it's essentially just blackjack at that point.
Blackjack is what, 21?
Yeah.
Panel on panels, teaching you how to gamble.
It's what we're here for.
I've never understood poker. I played it once with some friends. We had a bunch of change, like as the pot, and I was just like,
the same thing with me. It's just like, did I win? Look at my cards.
Yeah.
How did I do? I don't know what this is.
I could have taken the whole thing, and everybody would be like, nah, sorry, man. Like, all right, fair enough. Take my quarters,
Exactly. Cool. Well, we've talked about Superman. We've talked about pretty much everything here.
Yeah.
Cool. So we want to turn now to how we end every show, which is our recommendation segment, where we recommend comics we think you should be reading.
Our other guest segment?
Oh, here's the thing. Ibrahim felt I feel like you fit in with this show so well. I forgot you were a guest and not here. Every week. What we do, it's something we do with all of our guests is a segment called Weird Questions with Donovan Eilert. So we're going to turn that over.
Okay, cool. What is the least appropriate instrument for jazz music?
Oh man, an accordion.
Oh, excellent.
Weird Al would disagree, but
Yeah,
He's the minority there.
it's true.
If you had to name a dog after a leafy green vegetable, what would you name that dog?
kale.
Oh, that's a really
There
good
you
dog
go.
name, actually.
I love how
yeah.
fast that was too. Done.
Also, what kind of dog would that be?
Australian Shepherd.
Ooh,
Kale the Australian Shepherd.
I like it.
Excellent.
I kind of wanted a Cocker Spaniel named Daniel, but that's I told my girlfriend, I was like, if we get the only way I'll get a second dog is if this
Cocker
happens.
Spaniel named Daniel. That's awesome. And then, what is one sentence that proves the existence of Sasquatch but disproves ghosts?
That is the toughest weird question you've ever asked.
What is one sentence that proves the existence of Sasquatch, but
Disproves the existence of ghosts.
You can take a moment if you need.
I do not vet these questions
let's-
enough.
let's
You
un-
really should start running these.
Let's unpack this for a minute,
Yeah,
because
please.
Sasquatch is something that like feasibly one
The Northwest Wood Ape.
could see, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I had to study some evolutionary stuff for a debate with a Christian friend. No, that'd
be awesome.
I
sequence
prepared.
I was drawing in a book, and looking at the various like proto humans. It the way that the branches kind of diverge from the main trunk of evolution. It's not all that unreasonable that like one of those could have evolved into Sasquatch.
Straight up hominid, just
Yeah.
straight into Sasquatch.
Yeah. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's the sentence.
Like we've got evolution.
It's not
to support-
unreasonable that a person could have evolved into, or that proto-humans as primates or whatever could have evolved into Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But imaginary, sort of transparent people. I guess it depends on your definition of ghost.
Well, what is your definition of ghosts?
This
This is
sort
getting very deep.
Stay with me, guys.
of well, this is sort of cobbled together from other things I've heard and sort of some of my own theories on it. But I heard something once about the idea of time like folding over on itself. So maybe when your bathroom cupboard opens and shuts or whatever, that was actually your bathroom cupboard 50 years ago opening and shutting, and there's just kind of a weird sort of like time bridge that happened there, like an echo from the past type of thing.
I like that.
So maybe that's
Not gonna lie, gonna use that in a book now.
yeah,
Also, the term time bridge,
Right?
Super awesome.
Well, it's kind of like that movie Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. Like, they
Yeah,
can
a
kinda-
movie that nobody references.
yeah, which
but
is
it's actually
great
it's a
time
pretty
travel
cool movie. Yeah.
I loved. Have you guys seen Predestination?
Yes.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
this movie's
yeah.
crazy. Anyway, sorry, I keep.
You're
doing
watching
these
all the same
standards.
random movies I am.
That's great. You guys, if you haven't seen that, watch
Gorgoni, have you seen Predestination?
Ethan
John,
Hawke.
should I watch
Oh,
Predestination?
Dude,
He has the most strong opinions about time travel and
I
stuff.
left that movie thinking about it.
Check it out.
harder than any
I wanna
movie
talk
I've
to you about
ever. I mean, yeah.
It's based on a Robert A. Heinlein short story too.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But yeah, so I
I
mean,
may have read that.
It's called All You Zombies.
I think,
Yeah.
Bigfoot seems like a plausible evolutionary offshoot, whereas ghosts do not seem plausible to me.
Cool.
Fair enough.
I guess that's my sentence.
I like it.
That works for me.
That was fun. Thank you.
yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So now we turn to our recommendation segment. And we always like start with our guest. Ibrahim, do you have something you'd like to recommend that people check out?
I just read the first like hardcover collection of Lazarus.
Oh,
By
yeah.
Michael Lark, and I'm blanking on the colorist's name. Forgive me, colorist. The colors are great in that book.
It's that book.
Yeah, I mean Greg Rucka is a genius.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the guy's brilliant, and it's just another hit for him. And then the team of him and Michael Lark. If you're a Gotham Central fan,
Yeah.
Yes, one of my favorite books.
yeah, it's the perfect style of art for that book because it's fairly realistic, so it makes this whole thing more believable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just this really cool sort of like maybe alternate future, maybe actual future, sort of potential. Like I'm not sure when it takes place. I think it's later in the like 2040 or something.
Yeah.
like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So basically,
in the not too distant future.
yeah, the
somewhere
world is
in time and
ruled by
space.
like a number of
Yep.
different families, and each family has what's called a Lazarus, which is like this genetically engineered soldier that protects the family and their holdings. And it's just kind of about that world and about this one specific Lazarus as she sort of starts to come to the realization that maybe she's not what she thinks she is as far as being part of the family. And
Right.
It's just brilliant. It's really
Yeah,
well done.
we've definitely recommended that book a couple of times
For
on here.
sure.
It's
Well, it's
so
one of those
good.
cool sci-fi things I love where it's like it introduces you to these characters, and then as opposed to introducing you to the world at once, it introduces you to this singular thing, and then just starts expanding, and then you start realizing how big the world is, and then every once in a while somebody mentions something else, and you're like, well, that family's out there, and this
Yeah.
thing, and it sort of slowly unravels,
Yeah.
as opposed to dumping a bunch of exposition about the world on you.
Have you read the third trade of that? I don't know where the hardcover ends off.
I think the hardcover is like the first two.
Okay.
And the second collection is just about to come out, so I read it in perfect timing.
Cool.
I've
Yeah.
had it forever. I just when you
Such
make
a great
comics, there's so much
How
less time
the
to read
third
it.
trade
This is what I've heard
expands
from
out
several
on the
people.
world was just like, oh my god, you're blowing
Yeah.
my mind
Yeah.
right now.
It's an amazing
so
book.
excited.
Such a good book.
Amazing book. Yeah, cool. Donovan?
Well, this is a little embarrassing, but I lost the note I had of.
Oh, no.
But I remember what I was going to recommend.
Well, that's
partially.
good.
This is weird. This doesn't usually happen. But there, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, but there's a now dead podcast that I think we all love called The Thrilling Adventure Hour.
Mm-hmm.
And have you listened to that ever at all?
I have yet to dive into it.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
It's-
one of my
it's-
buddies, Ben Acker, is.
Yeah.
You know Ben Acker?
Yeah, well, we're Twitter friends, and we've talked about working together a few times. It just the
Nice.
planets haven't lined up yet.
But yeah, him.
Excellent.
We're big Acker and Blacker fans.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a stage production of radio shows that didn't exist, and they're just like really fun, like Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars,
Yep.
Beyond Belief about people who are.
You know Sparks, Nevada?
Well, so I hear my neighbor I told you guys about who worked on Superman
Yeah.
3 as a production guy.
Yeah.
His last name is Sparks, and his family founded Sparks, Nevada.
Oh, crap.
So I actually ordered the first issue of that for him. As like, hey, check this out. You
Oh,
know?
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's so awesome.
I know, cool, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't had a chance to read it myself yet.
It's
but-
fantastic.
There's a collection. So Image did a couple like Sparks Nevada and Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
I know that they did like miniseries, but there's a collection by Akron Blacker. And again, I'm sorry, I had the artist names and everything, but it's multiple people.
Jay Bone, I think, did Sparks, Nevada,
Yes,
right?
that's
and then
right.
I want to say Phil Hester did the.
Beyond Belief.
Was that the one that has like the Paul F. Tompkins?
Yes.
likeness in it? Yeah. I believe Phil Hester
That's
did
right.
that one.
Nice.
That's right. Thank
Yeah.
you for pointing that out when I lost that piece of paper. But it is they made the collection and they stopped it for a while. Now they're reprinting it, and it is awesome. If
It's
you
really
love
cool.
that podcast, great. If you don't, you should.
Yeah, I haven't had a
And
chance
then
to
you
read
should
the comics
also
yet.
read that collection. It's awesome. Just a little snippets of stories. I mean, it's so episodic the way that it plays out. You could almost tune into any episode of that show.
love it.
And it's great. So it's super fun. Beautiful, beautiful hardcover. A little oversized. I had to figure out a shelf to put it on when I got it originally. But,
I've had to create a separate shelf of oversized hardcovers.
yeah,
at
but
this
man,
point.
it's just it's excellent. So
I'm gonna grab that.
yeah, and listen to podcasts too. There's some great even if you just pick one title and listen through it.
Sparks, Nevada.
And they're only,
Sparks
they're
Nevada's
only like
probably
12
And
to
Beyond
15 minute
Belief.
episodes.
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, you can burn through them really
Well,
quickly.
see, and I mean, my work is such that like podcasts are like my lifeblood. I
Yeah,
don't
that-
really
this
listen to a lot of music while I work.
Yeah,
It's
this is something we've heard from a lot of artists.
Yeah.
Audiobooks and podcasts.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Which is cool.
That is awesome.
Anyway, so yeah, I recommend everybody to check
That's
out
great.
that podcast and that comic because they're excellent.
Nice. Gorgoni?
So I've got a title that has some super people in it.
Okay. I take it Superman is not one of them?
No, not really. I'm recommending Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, let's just go there, man.
Can we not though have that conversation of who would win in a fight?
No, I know, yeah, right.
We try to avoid that
Goku
at all
Superman,
costs
right?
on this show because it could just become the whole show.
But the Dragon Ball Z manga was done by Akira Toriyama. It's been around forever. If you've not heard of Dragon Ball Z and you're listening to this podcast, I don't know how that cross section worked out.
Was that would the manga come first?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But recently they just started reissuing them with full like colorized versions of them in these like really nice bound versions of the different arcs, kind of like split up into big omnibuses sort of, but they're gorgeous looking. I don't know who did the coloring for them. It doesn't list anybody, which leads me to assume that Akira Toriyama did it himself, which seems crazy because I feel like that guy has better things to do than color all of his
You know,
old
a
work.
lot of manga artists like that they'll do like the main character stuff.
Oh yeah, and
they
then they'll have like a legion of people
Yeah.
helping them out
So
with
it
their
could have
studio
been
stuff. Right, it could have
10
been
different
anybody. Right. So for all I know, that's exactly what happened. But
Good
his is
going. I
the
did
only
some of
name
the color work
on the
on
book.
that.
Oh, see, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
yes.
I defer the credit.
Some
there.
of the Krillin's bald spot really shone, and like I was like, oh, this is a Donovan thing.
Thank you very much. But not the Donovan comic effect.
No. Yeah, that's like Kirby Crackle, but like Donovan effect.
Yeah, that sounds like a CBS The Donovan Effect. Thursdays at 9.
It's in production right now.
yeah.
But yeah, if you can track down the new Dragon Ball Z color versions, I believe they're just called Dragon Ball in color. They are pretty gorgeous and fun to read.
Very cool. My recommendation is a Superman comic. I felt appropriate for the
Yeah.
show. I'm recommending it's something I give the people frequently go, I don't like Superman, so or whatever. Or I don't
It's
know much
mostly
about
just
Superman.
me.
I don't think I've ever given you this book, Gorgoni. Maybe I should. You'd probably hate it though. The book I usually give people is Superman's Secret Origin.
Secret Identity
No, Secret
or
Origin.
the Jeff Johns.
Jeff
one.
Johns,
Okay.
Gary Frank.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like it's a really good distillation of the origin story. Secret Identity is a great book too.
Yeah, I know we're going long, but I was going to throw that on at the end.
Yeah. Secret Identity. Well, I mean, I could just because I also like Birthright by Wade.
Birthright, that's the other one. I have 3 Superman stories that are like my go-to.
Okay.
Secret Identity.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a take on like what if Superman existed in the real world.
Yeah.
Right, where Superman is already a comic book character, and it's brilliant. Kurt
Mm-hmm.
Busiek wrote it.
You might
Stuart
like that
Immonen
one.
drew it.
Gorgoni.
They're actually, and I heard they're doing a follow-up,
Is that right?
No.
a
Wait.
Batman version with John
What?
Paul Leon drawing it.
Yeah, I got to
And
check
I think
that
that
out.
should be coming out sooner rather than later. I don't know.
that
it
I'm
hasn't
definitely
been
gonna check
announced or
out,
anything, but I've heard rumblings about it.
Okay, very cool.
But yeah, like it's a very grounded like, and they pull a lot from these for the last 2 movies too. Like the, but it's about his struggles. You know, the government's after him, how he deals with that, how he balances having a family.
Great book.
And it follows him from the time he's a teenager till he's an old man. It's so well done. Stuart Immonen is one of the best. He's a modern. artist.
I mean, yeah.
Period.
I'll
you know?
like if I see his name on a thing and see his art style, I was like, ooh, I'll at least like read the first
Yeah.
issue of this.
Yeah, the other one, Birthright by
Yes.
Mark Waid and Lineal Yu.
Fantastic book.
It's for me, it's the definitive Superman origin story.
Yeah.
You know, the S stands for hope. They got that from
That's Waid,
that book. Yeah, it's so good.
All right, listener. So here's the deal. We had a slight bit of technical difficulty at the very end of the episode, partially because if you mention Superman's name too many times in a podcast, your equipment breaks. It just shuts down, apparently is what we learned. We're still figuring that out. However, we didn't get to finish the episode completely, so what we would like to say is that issue number 8 of Dr. Fate, that is drawn by Ibrahim Moustafa himself, is on comic stands now unless it's completely sold out. And if it's completely sold out, it makes perfect sense because that book is amazing and you should check it out. You can also check him out on Twitter, Ibrahim_M_. And you can check us out on Twitter at panelonpanels@gmail.com, panelonpanels at Twitter and Instagram and all. Just Panel on Panels. You've heard us say this a million times before. What you haven't heard me say before is my Twitter handle is Donald the Bomber, and I'm plugging this right now because I want to talk about Star Trek Enterprise, and Gorgoni and John will not let me do it. Hey, they're shutting me down. See you next week.